Alrighty. Says we're live. You don't need the air hole. Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna try something on my end.
Okay.
Okay, can you mute yourself for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, go go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah, apparently you're still coming out robotic. Has this happened before on your channel?
Wait a minute. Whoops. I'm hearing the playback on YouTube. I guess we are live now. Whoops. I need to find the. Let's see if I mute it. That should do it better. Okay. How's all that? Am I sounding okay now?
It's still a little robotic-y. Now I can actually hear myself on the other side now too. There is the reverb.
Yeah. Well, I just muted my YouTube, so hopefully that makes it a little better.
Mm.
Yeah, it's weird. Derek wasn't saying anything about me sounding robotic the other day.
Yeah, did you use your webcam that time?
Yeah, I was.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, so.
Huh.
Is this your first time using StreamYard?
No, I used StreamYard with Derek for the other stream.
Okay. Yeah, then I don't know what's going on. So.
I mean, is the robotic soundingness too distracting or no?
No, it's not that distracting. I think we'll be okay unless somebody comes in. So, but other than that, I think we're okay at the moment.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
If you want to put the camera back on, or do you want to put a little avatar?
I'll go ahead and put my camera back on.
Okay, yeah, because there wasn't much of a difference. So, and do you want to do a share? Do you want me to do a share screen so that you can see what I'm doing artwork wise, and that kind of gives you some visual flair? Or are you okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, I won't do any share audio or anything, so I'll just share the website.
Okay.
That way it won't. Yeah, there'll hopefully be a lot less problems. Unfortunately, I'm working on some guy's hand.
Okay. And there we go.
Yeah. Okay then.
All right. Well, anyway, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for Ref and I having a little interesting little chit chat earlier. It's just that there's a little bit of technical difficulties going on. So apparently, I'm sounding like a robot live on YouTube. So hopefully, let us know if it's not too distracting. But yes, tonight I have my friend Raf and Shoma on the channel to do similar to what I did with my friend Derek of Bonus Commentary the other day, doing a little chat about Godzilla and possibly some other things. And we're gonna do our best to try not to ramble on and go on tangents too much.
Speak for yourself.
Anyway, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, Raf, and the off chance they don't know who you are.
Yes, I'm Rafin Shoma. I'm a somewhat professional artist. And I just do a bunch of silly stuff on my YouTube channel, and usually kaiju related, although I haven't done anything significant too lately. Unless you count a series of just kind of compilation videos related to short kaiju related media. But yeah, I also do a just late night chill and comedy show called Live Stream of Consciousness. Usually with my friend Brayton. We used to have a lot more guests, but it's either everyone's way too busy now or other things I care not to go into detail with. But yeah, it was first time. It's first time in a long time I've been invited to someone else's show. So thank you for this, Goji Shay.
Yeah, no problem. I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time now, and I finally got stuff situated on my computer to where I can present myself on YouTube now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah,
So,
it was probably a good idea to do this on your channel because yeah, it's if you plan on doing this more often, this is definitely the learning curve. I had to kind of go through similar stuff when I started my streamings. So
mhm. And as we know, it's kind of hard whenever you'd have to multitask.
mhm. Oh yeah, definitely. So and hopefully me just doing artwork here will just kind of give you a little extra flair for this particular stream. So
Yes. All
yep.
right.
Okay.
So, excuse me. What Raph and I are going to discuss tonight, we're going to go into detail about why we're such big Godzilla fans. We're going to talk about some of our favorite aspects about the Godzilla franchise and go along from there. So,
Mm-hmm.
since you're my guest, Raph, I'll go ahead and ask you first. How did you first get into Godzilla?
Well, I think like a lot of little kids, practically every child, if you think about it, I was sort of a big dinosaur geek, so to speak, dinosaur freak, I should say. So I used to watch a lot of documentaries throughout the 1980s about dinosaurs, and every once in a while I find dinosaur-related entertainment. Although I wasn't like somebody who would eat up every dinosaur-related thing. There was plenty of times where even as a little kid, I was like, "This is kind of lame. This doesn't speak to me as far as a dinosaur connoisseur is." But it was like through various dinosaur documentaries, most notably Discovery Channel's Hollywood Dinosaurs, hosted by Doug McClure, that I kind of got my first glimpses of what a Godzilla was, with some reused footage from Godzilla versus Megalon. So I was kind of interested by that. Although I have to say, if I really did have like a true proto kaiju experience, I think it was with the Ghostbuster franchise. Since
Huh.
now looking back towards the animated real Ghostbusters series, it's like, yeah, granted, the movie itself had the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man at the end in the climax, but the Ghostbusters animated series, the real Ghostbusters, I should say, that's what they called it. I'm not just being a biased fan or anything.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they had it's like rewatching the show, especially revisiting the episodes on YouTube since the official channel's uploading so many episodes. There was so much sort of introduction to giant monster fiction. It was ridiculous. Like I think the Ghostbusters should be up there with Ultraman and Power Rangers as far as giant monster fighting goes.
There's a lot
So
of
event
similarities.
yeah, but no, it's like what is one episode they go to make a movie in Hollywood based on their so-called true lives, and they face against like like a 50-foot animatronic that's been possessed by a ghost. There's an episode where they meet Cthulhu. There's an episode where Egon accidentally summons a 100-foot long dragon. There's episodes where another sleeping ghost gets so pissed off it possesses a couple toys and becomes bigger than the Brooklyn Bridge. It's like, yeah. Another episode where a bunch of dead circus animals take over a roller coaster and becomes a brontosaurus roller coaster. And then so on and so forth. It was pretty ridiculous how many giant monster elements were in that show. And as a little kid, I was like, I wish I could see something like this in live action that wasn't like, a minuscule 5 minutes or something that takes place in a completely alien world that has nothing to do with the real world. Which was sort of granted, the 1980s is considered a golden time for fantasy media and all that. But when you really think about a lot of those stories kind of fell into a lot of like unimaginative American tropes where, it's like, oh yeah, all these fantastical things are happening in worlds so far removed from the real world that if there's any real stakes, it does not kind of matter. Like, yeah, the Star Wars movies are awesome, but the fact that people can easily kind of just disconnect from them because it takes place in a galaxy far, far away is sort of a problem with the franchise unless you're really invested with the human characters and human characters alone.
Mhm.
Same thing with a
Yeah.
lot of Disney movies or other fantasy films like Neverending Story or Tron, where there are these amazing worlds that happen, but they happen like in a separate universe completely far removed from the real world. And as
Right.
Ghostbusters 2 or a lot of superhero movies have done, yeah, this stuff might happen in the real world, but the fantastic elements can easily be covered up or they're quickly forgotten about the next movie. So when I finally got a chance to see a honest to goodness Godzilla movie playing on television, it was New Year's Day 1990. And my local channel 13, KCOP, I think it was called, um, they did a Godzilla New Year's marathon. And my dad was cool enough to record most of it on VHS tape. I still have those on VHS tapes, and before they get too old, I really should make some digital copies and upload them. Just at the very least, the weird commercials that aired, because this was during like the time when Ninja Turtles were big. So it's like
Yeah, yeah.
they had some guy in like in like a very simple Michelangelo costume hosting the marathon. But needless to say, the first Godzilla movie I ever truly sat down and saw, not counting like stock footage and commercial commercials here and there, was Godzilla versus Mothra, and it was generally a revelation because all the insane stuff that I would see all the time in animated television shows of the day or comic books were happening right there, and it wasn't limited because of various other factors. It's like there's a giant dinosaur attacking the city. Everyone knows about it. Everyone is treating it seriously, and it's the point of the whole movie. And while the special effects were never convincing, even back then as a little kid, I knew it was a guy in a monster suit. It was still
Yeah.
so colorful and spectacular that I just instantly fell in love with it. And of course, I had like a excellent crash course in kaiju films because it was the UPA syndication package of Godzilla movies. So it was in order: Godzilla versus Mothra, Godzilla versus Monster Zero, Godzilla's War of the Gargantuas, Godzilla's Revenge, Terror of Mechagodzilla, Rodan, and I didn't see the last movie, Godzilla King of the Monsters. It was recorded on one videotape. I forgot where it was, but we all had to go to a crummy dinner with our aunts. So of course I was pissed off. But yeah, it's like that was like an excellent crash course in the world of Godzilla, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And I've been sort of a giant monster fan ever since. Not just limited to Godzilla, but practically everything else in the mostly everything else in the genre.
Mhm.
I do have to admit though, it's gotten a little too crazy recently because it's like there was a time I thought Sci-Fi Channel original movies were a good idea, and then like 19 movies later, no. And cut to yeah, and now cut today we have not only the Asylum, but now China through their various cable channels and satellite stations are making their own slightly above better, but no less crummy Sci-Fi Channel original style movies, even going as far as making official remakes of some of those movies. So yeah, I think it's a case of be careful what you wish for. But beyond that, I've been very fortunate with the state of giant monsterdom. But how did
Mm.
you? But if you don't mind me asking you, how did you get into the whole kaiju genre?
Well, my earliest memory, this is not a joke. My earliest memory that I can remember from my whole life is sitting on my high chair when I was, gosh, probably only about 2 or 3 years old, and watching, eating my mom's plate of my mom's homemade spaghetti, and watching. I believe it was Terror of Mechagodzilla because I distinctly remember Godzilla fighting Mechagodzilla, and
Mm.
this I believe would have been on TNT during when the TNT Monster Vision marathons would have been airing around that time.
Oh, you mean with Joe Bob Briggs or just a regular TNT Monster Vision?
Well, I don't exactly remember for sure. I was only about 2 or 3 years old. I don't know if it would
Okay.
have been when Joe Bob Briggs was hosting, but yes, this was, yeah, this would have been around. This would have fit that time frame because I know TNT was Monster Vision was doing Godzilla marathons like around 1994 or so, and yeah,
Hmm.
that's when I would have been like 3 years old or so.
Hmm.
Yes, I know they probably did other marathons. Well, not other marathons, other movies. That's what I meant to say. And I remember I went on YouTube a while ago and went back and watched some of the commercials, the commercials that went on. And I remember during the commercials when they were hyping up all the movies, all the monsters Godzilla fight, they said, and also starring Baragon, but it's Gabara. I don't
Oh
know why
yeah,
they
yeah.
named. Uh-huh. I don't know
Okay,
why
yeah.
they. Yeah.
No, I remember that commercial too. They basically like Blue Oyster Cult's. They did a music video based on Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla, but they got some of the monster information wrong. Granted, not as bad as some of the stuff we still see today, like, oh, there's two separate endings for Godzilla versus Kong or some nonsense like that. But I know which one
Yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Mhm. Speaking of that rumor of Godzilla and Kong, the two different endings, that was in a bunch of like books around the 90s or so. And I remember going on online, some websites
Hmm.
thought it was fact that in the original King Kong versus Godzilla, there was two endings. What in the English ending where King Kong wins, the other where Godzilla lives. And until some of us in the States finally saw that Japanese version, a lot of people thought for the longest time that was true, but nope. As we nowadays know, Kong wins in both versions.
Yeah, more or less. Although my friend, our friend, mutual friend Brayton, he had that hilarious gag he did once, where it's like we brought up this thing. He says, "Oh, there is a difference in the Japanese version when it says the end, it's in Japanese. In the American version, it says the end in English." So
What a big difference.
yeah, yeah, what a huge difference there indeed. So, but yeah. Hold on, I made a slight mistake here. But yeah, continue. So your first little exposure was sort of an kind of meeting on TNT, and
Yep.
then what?
And then from there, my parents saw how much I ended up just loving those movies. And so slowly throughout the years, I began to build up a VHS collection of my own. In fact, I distinctly remember the very two first Godzilla movies I owned on VHS. They were King Kong versus Godzilla and Godzilla versus Monster Zero, or Invasion of Astro Monster.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to say Monster Zero because that's what I called it all the time growing up. And from what I understand, that actually is not the true English translation of the title in Japanese. I found that out recently.
Yeah, to be fair though, I hate to say I think Godzilla versus Monster Zero is a slightly better title.
Mhm.
Although I think the Return of King Ghidorah would have been a much more accurate title because either title makes you think it's going to be a brand new monster movie. And even as a little kid, when Godzilla versus Monster Zero came on the channel, it's like even like I knew enough about the Godzilla franchise through like library books that that's not a new monster. Is this King Ghidorah with a new name? What the hell?
Yep.
Lame, lameo.
It's odd enough. That's another thing I realized. My first two Godzilla movies that I owned on VHS, they both end this in a similar way. They both end with both monsters falling into the ocean at the end of the battle, and the
Hmm.
monster that Godzilla fights comes up out of the water, but we never see Godzilla. Just an odd little detail I noticed about those being the first two movies I owned on VHS, and they both end that way.
Yeah. Although in retrospect, I know that Nick Adams' little dialogue line at the end of Astro Monsters makes it sound as if King Ghidorah just killed Godzilla and Rodan and ran away. But I also it in my own head canon, it's obvious that Godzilla and Rodan won, and they're probably doing their silly little victory dance at the bottom of the ocean, but nobody can see them.
Yeah, that was how I interpreted it, that Ghidorah was flying away and retreating.
Hmm. Exactly. But yeah, yeah, I guess it's like God bless these films, but yeah, the ocean is the exit door as far as Godzilla's concerned.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah.
yeah. Okay. I'll
But,
let you continue the questioning. So
oh, yeah. So I was gonna say so what I did with Derek, our good friend our good friend who hopefully we'll be able to do a stream with all three of us. We've been trying to get to that for a while. I'm sure
Mhm.
fingers crossed it'll happen finally at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we did once we got by our introductions, but how we got introduced to the Godzilla franchise, we started talking about what our favorite suits were, our favorite suits or Godzilla designs throughout the eras. So
Yeah.
starting with,
I
sorry,
think.
go ahead.
Oh yeah, I know that's a common question. So, but at the same time, I'm not that big into like different costumes. So if I end up just talking about different Godzilla designs I like, I hope you forgive me.
Sure. That's fine.
Okay. All right.
We started with the Showa era. So if there is a favorite suit or Showa era, from the Showa era or design that you like, Raph, go on ahead.
Um, well, it's like now that I'm older and wiser, I know that a lot of those suits were just kind of repurposed from one another, or they were slightly altered from one version or another. So, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't a situation where they built a brand new Godzilla suit for every movie. Like in some cases, that would be the case, but other times they just, it's like I always wondered why the Godzilla in Godzilla versus Mothra was nowhere near as was a lot better looking than the Godzilla suits that they would make for King Ghidorah and Monster Zero, only to find out later, oh yeah, they got rid of some of the more fearsome features on the same costume, but it's basically the same costume.
To make him a little more heroic looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a little more goofier or something. So with
Yeah.
that says, yeah, I really can't say too much about Godzilla suits, but I will say which movies the Godzilla suits slash designs look the best for me. And if we're starting with the Showa era, I do have to like I think the first one, like the first real impressive, oh, that's a really good creature suit in the Godzilla franchise. Like no disrespect to the 1954 movie, but I think Godzilla versus Mothra, the fourth appearance of Godzilla, that was definitely great because he had that great scour, those pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those were deliberate, the eyebrows, but that really kind of added a lot of character to the creature. And
It really
overall,
made him look. Sorry, I was just going to say they really made him look fierce. That little
yes,
detail with the eyebrows.
yes, as well as what I do know was sort of a sort of suit making mistake. There was supposed to be a wire in the mouth. I may be mistaken, so don't quote me completely. But there was a wire on the. There was supposed to be wiring within the mouth that was supposed to make the mouth move, but it broke. So that kind of led to Godzilla having this weird quivering movement to his lips, which actually adds a lot more life to it. And overall,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a really good Godzilla costume. I think that one was perfectly one of the best looking Godzillas ever.
Yes, I would
Um,
agree with you on that.
yes, and afterwards, the only other Showa era Godzilla that I have like a major preference for is probably the late 70s version of Godzilla that was introduced in Godzilla vs. Megalon and all the way up to Terra Mecha Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
Because by that point, yeah, Godzilla has transformed into a full-blown superhero. But that version, that suit, it has such a nice kind of almost live action anime simplicity to it. And I love how Godzilla, like in Megalon, Godzilla is pretty adorable, but make the suit, they alter the suit a little bit, especially around the eye regions, to make him a lot more fearsome looking for the two Mecha Godzilla movies. And
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I always kind of enjoyed it. Like, granted, it's not one of the best scary Godzillas, but as just kind of a action hero Godzilla, I think those costumes work beautifully. So
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree with that.
yes, what's your choices for um the Showa era Godzilla costumes?
I'm the exact same way with you about the late era Showa Godzilla, the design from Megalon through Terra Mecha Godzilla. It's not a very that Godzilla suit doesn't appear to have much muscle on it, as we'll get into with some of my later Godzilla designs. I do like it when Godzilla looks very bulky. I guess I want to say where it looks like he has some
Mm-hmm.
muscle. That suit, you don't really get much of an impression with that suit, but there's something I don't know. I don't want to say cute because if we're going to say cute, it's probably the distinct Megalon design with the smile. It seemed like he could sometime make with that suit, but Yeah, I have a lot of nostalgia for that suit because I first grew up on superhero Godzilla when he
Hmm.
was heroic, and that's the suit I immediately think of when I think of Godzilla. Whenever he's been portrayed in a more heroic way, and Godzilla kind of was my first superhero. So yeah, I do have a lot of fondness for that suit, and like you said, with the slight alterations with the way they made him look more fierce, especially in Terror Mecha Godzilla. That's
Hmm.
definitely my absolute favorite look for that. And
Hmm.
huh, got
We
got
got
Fallen One
somebody.
Gaming. Joe Mento from Fallen One Gaming and Nerd Cage Live.
Oh,
So,
hey. Okay, I know
hey,
that channel. I watched that one.
thanks a lot, Joe. I appreciate this. I appreciate you giving us the view.
Yes, Joe. Hello. Yes, he's watching from work, though he popped in the show to support us. Oh, thank you very much. So yeah, it's nice to see a familiar face.
Yeah,
So
Joe's a good guy.
yes.
Anyway, my other favorite suits, yes, just like you, I've really and especially in later years, I've come around to the Mothra versus Godzilla suit. That's a
Hmm.
that like you said, that's a very cool, and if I have to use the term badass look for Godzilla.
Hmm.
And if I was to throw in one more, I'd say the King Kong versus Godzilla suit. That's probably the bulkiest out of all the Showa era Godzilla suits, and I always thought that one looked so cool. There's one thing that does kind of bother me about it though. It's that the eyes in the King Kong versus Godzilla suit always seem like they're looking upwards like this all the time,
Yeah.
no matter when a Godzilla's facing King Kong or not. And Derek, when I was chatting with him the other day, he said it kind of made it look like Godzilla was sort of like a frog with that weird little eye looking up all the time thing.
No, yeah.
But other besides that little detail, I always had a lot of nostalgia for that suit as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was also the first time they decided to go full reptilian with Godzilla too, which works out for the most part. Like I kind of have a preference for the mammalian touches on Godzilla. But yeah, the fact that that was when they decided just to turn him more dinosaurish, it definitely was a very appealing look. So
Mhm.
okay.
Alrighty. So
Are
now that we got the Showa era designs out of the way, we'll move on to the Heisei era designs. So
mhm.
go ahead, Raph. Say if there's a designer suit from the Heisei era that you really like.
Well, okay, probably an unpopular opinion. Pop, 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 pop. Sorry about all the pops. Probably an unpopular opinion, but I don't have that much of love for the Heisei era Godzilla suits. Like design wise, they're perfect because I think it was a perfect combination of all these traits that the previous Showa Godzilla had. And I do love some of the weird add-ons, like giving Godzilla that bizarre three pecs that I've never really seen repeated in other creature designs before. And the return of mammalian features to both his face and I would argue maybe the tail too, with that kind of rigid tail it had. Um, but with that said, most of the costumes have never looked really good to me. It's like either Godzilla's way too fat, or you can tell the costume's is kind of slumpy in its own right.
Yeah,
Um, with
even
that
though I
said,
do. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, Godzilla vs King Ghidorah. Yeah, yeah. It's like from what I understand, that was sort of a recycled stunt costume because the main suit they had from Biolante was lost. At least that's how I understand it. But with that says, I think the best looking Heisei era Godzilla is definitely the one featured in Godzilla versus Biolante because it's like not only is it beautifully designed, but I love how that's the first time they introduced the Heisei design. It looked its best.
Hmm.
I love that they did the eyes in such a way that it's almost like the eyes of a bear or certain wolves, where you can
Hmm.
see the irises, you can see the pupils, but it's so dark you really have to look into it, giving it a more animalistic and hence realistic look. It's not like certain Godzillas where you can clearly see the pupils in a very human, almost cartoonish manner, and as such, if the costume might end up looking a little awkward in certain scenes. Um, and overall, just really good. A good mix of like the bulkiness and the muscle of the beast that makes it feel inhuman just enough. Uh, Granted, though, it's not the most action heavy Godzilla because there's other versions of Godzilla in the Heisei era that you can arguably have a lot more fun with as far as action sequences go. But
Mhm.
this definitely was like the pinnacle of monster design, and that's saying a lot. And granted, though, he takes a back seat to Biollante when we finally see her in her final form, but it's definitely the best looking Godzilla. Secondly, though, I will give an honorable mention to Burning Godzilla.
Mhm.
Just because it is such a cool visual. And
Yes, it
I
is.
do yes, and I do have a little bit of love for the '84 version of Godzilla, even knowing that it kind of suffers from the I hate to use this terminology because it really is kind of mean spirited to the actress that's referenced in it, but the um oh man, who's the girl in Sex in the City? Jessica
Sarah
Parker?
Jessica Parker.
Sarah just yeah, where
Mm.
it's like like no offense to her, but everyone says she's like she has that weird look where if she turns her head to one way, she looks like a completely different person. Another way, she looks like a completely different person, regardless of the attractiveness. It's like Godzilla '84 suffers from the same problem. It's like there if depending on where the suit is, Godzilla '84 either looks like the most menacing thing imaginable, but if he turns to the side a little bit, he looks utterly goofy. But but I do appreciate what they were trying to do with the costume and with the design of the creature itself. The designs are great. The costume executions are a different story altogether. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
number one, I would definitely have to go with Biollante Godzilla. So
We're gonna have some overlap then because that would be my top choice for my favorite Heisei era design is to the Biolante design.
no,
Um,
that's
it's not changed all that much in King Ghidorah, from what I understand. They just kind of made. I think they made the chest for when they did King Ghidorah a little bit larger compared to how it
mhm.
was in Biolante. But yeah, there's not much too difference. But besides that,
Yeah, and
yeah, that's
of
just
course.
that's the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna make a joke about the thunder thighs, which is a problem with a lot of Godzillas. But yeah, no, I agree with you
That's
there.
what I was going to say too. That's a big criticism for the Heisei designs. I don't know if they thought they just needed to go big or go home, but yeah, whenever Godzilla had way too thick legs, yeah,
hmm
it didn't feel quite like that worked to me.
Yes.
And also, it kind of affected the choreography for fight scenes too. They didn't quite flow as well as the Showa era towards the end there. It kind of seems like they just, especially in the latter Heisei era, whenever there was like physical fighting, they mostly Godzilla would mostly just crash against the other monster he would fight kind of
hmm
awkwardly. Yeah.
hmm Or just the overuse of laser attacks while the monsters don't really do any physical harm whatsoever. Like I know that was a big problem with Space Godzilla. So
Yeah. If I was to think of what the quintessential Heisei era Godzilla look is, I would say that's the first suit that pops into my head, the Biolante suit.
hmm
It really became one of the most iconic looks for Godzilla. It was everywhere in the '90s,
yes.
especially with all the toys that they made. And if I was to pick a runner-up, I agree with you. I would go with the Return of Godzilla suit. It's kind of grown on me. I think that I do get where you're coming from with kind of the complaints you have about it. I think the Cybot head doesn't quite help either. The Cybot head that they used, it didn't quite match up too well with the head, how the head and the suit looked, and there was points where it just looked kind of derpy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, the costume itself, it has this thing where if it's filmed from one angle, it looks utterly menacing. If it's filmed from another angle, it's like Godzilla's cross-eyed. What's going on? So,
Yeah. I'll also give a mention to the Destroya suit as well. I saw there was a YouTuber that I watched not too long ago who said that that was his overall favorite Godzilla design of all time. He was saying like, normally if I'd see any kind of Godzilla, I'd be like crapping my pants and worry. But if I saw the burning Godzilla suit, I'd be like, we're in the end times. We are screwed.
mhm.
Alrighty, so yeah. that was our Heisei era suits. Now we're moving on to the Millennium era. And go ahead and take it away, Raph, with any designs or suits that were your favorites from that era.
Well, I have okay. So even knowing if you were told me which era of the Godzilla franchise I would pick from, as my favorite set of movies, I would go Showa all the way. But the Millennium era is like second best for me, and there's a lot of stuff about the. I know a lot of people have disappointments and arguments about the Millennium era, but I personally have a lot of love for that era of Godzilla, and I love the fact that in addition to the movies, all kind of just experimenting with their own continuities and story universes, for lack of a better term. I also like how the Godzilla suits will change and improve over time. And while unlike the Heisei or Showa era, where there's like one particular Godzilla suit I do not like at all, for the most part, though, I think I have positive feelings for almost all of them. But if I had to pick ones I like the most, I really do like just like number one. I think GMK Final Wars Godzilla is the most appealing because I think they took a lot of wonderful little tidbits from all the past Godzillas and put it in this lean, mean, extremely appealing suit. And it's also like how there's like also a lot of extra elements taken from American sources, because I think some of the comic books and of course the second Godzilla movie, Raids Again, inspired various elements from said Godzilla. So the GMK version of Godzilla is just a really great looking villain design. So, and I just love how big and bulky he is. Although I know a lot of people that can't wrap their heads around that movie, but at the same time, I enjoy that GMK. Again, I enjoy the fact that the Millennium series kind of took Godzilla in the different directions and did their own things, which I know will like annoy and piss off a lot of fans who kind of prefer continuations of different stories instead of like this anthology format. And it's even harder. It's even harder for regular people to kind of wrap their heads around that. You know, that like the same kind of people who think Michael Keaton's Batman is the exact same person as Ben Affleck's Batman. They're
right.
Yes,
Those normies.
yeah. Or just like regular comic book fans too. Like I really can't stand out James Bond fans who have that fan theory. It's a good fan theory, but it really kind of goes against the idea of what the producers and filmmakers were thinking, where all the different James Bonds are supposed to be the same person, but it's like it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. And then there's the fan theory that 007 is just a title given the different people. But even when
James Bond is just the code name. Yep, I'm familiar with this theory.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense when you consider that he's battled like 5 different versions of Blofeld and 8 different versions of Salamandi and whatnot. So yeah, it doesn't hold up as far as the rest of the universe goes. So I absolutely don't mind the Millennium eras playing with different ideas and concepts and having them all stand alone in their own little universes, for lack of a better term. But yeah, GMK Godzilla I like a lot. I really do love Final Wars Godzilla the most. I love the Kiryu Saga version of Godzilla because that took a lot of the cool. That's like a more slimmed down version of the Godzilla 2000 and Godzilla vs. Megaguirus costume. But yeah, for the most part, no complaints about any of the Millennium era Godzillas. And I know we're counting the Reiwa era separate from Millennium era, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay, then I won't say anything else from there.
Okay. Before I get to what I've said, my favorite Millennium era suits, I want to highlight these comments from Joe. He says, I think one part of media is severely lacking for Godzilla's video games for sure. Yes, that's true. There are some good ones, but yeah, there hasn't been a true hit among the video games for people and like casual gamers who might not otherwise be interested in Godzilla. He also says, I personally would love to see a game from a human perspective and have a massive menacing Godzilla to scale, attacking the city, and the objective would be to find a way to take him down. The escape and attack sequences could be epic. Yeah. There was a video game like that was released in Japan a while ago called
City Shrouded in Shadows?
Yes, that's it. City Shrouded in Shadows, yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. In those games, you played as a human character trying to survive kaiju attacks going on in the city, and there wasn't just Godzilla. There was a lot of other. There was Gamera. There was Gamera and Gyaos, and I believe there was also some Gundams too. From what I understood about that game, I never
Uh,
got a chance to play it.
yeah, I don't know about the Gundams, but I know that there was Ultraman, Ultraman Tiga, some representation from the Mothra films, and Pat Labor, which is a criminally underrated giant robot series that I think kaiju fans would get a big kick out of because it's sort of a realistic take on giant robots, but it's done in a very funny, clever sort of way. Basically, what if giant robots were a common part of everyday life, just in construction work and military use, and there had to be a police department that took care of giant robot related crimes. Of course, the people who worked on Pat Labor were huge kaiju nerds themselves, so every once in a while, an actual giant monster will show up in the Pat Labor series. But I thought that was a very cute add-on. That was like a very unexpected addition. So, but
Hmm.
I don't remember any Gundam in the City Shrouded in Shadows, unless it was like a very minor element they barely played around with. So,
Yeah, I could be mistaken and just be getting it mixed in with all the many other Japanese giant robots that they touched on in that game.
mhm.
Joe says that's awesome. I should probably look into more Japanese titles for sure. Yeah, I should warn you, Joe. From what I understood, that game City Shroud and Shadow it wasn't translated into English, so I think that might be a big reason why it didn't quite sell too well over here in America.
Yeah, well, City Shrouded in Shadows, yeah, because it is a crossover game, although a lot of the characters never directly meet one another, that was sort of a um, that was sort of a compromise as far as having all these different characters in it.
Right.
For the most part, I think that was the main reason it couldn't be brought to America. But with that, and also I've heard mixed reviews towards it. I know a lot of people who bought and played the game wanted like a real kaiju crossover between the various characters, but all the various characters are kind of kept separate other than the fact that they menace our lead heroes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've also heard people say it's a pretty good, decent survival game, despite regardless if you're aware of who these characters are or not. So yeah, well, but yeah, maybe look into City Shrouded in Shadows. So
Hmm. Yes, real quick before I get back into the topic on the suits, there have been some good games. There was the Pipework, Joe. If you're watching, I'm sure Jay can tell you there was the Pipeworks trilogy of Godzilla games that came out back in the PS2, original Xbox, and GameCube generation, and those were basically fighting games with all the different monsters, like your Street Fighters, your Tekkens. Not, I won't say Mortal Kombat because they didn't get bloody and ultra violent like Mortal Kombat. Sorry, I
mhm.
know you and Jay are also big into Mortal Kombat, Joe. Yeah, and there are two others. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the video game. I actually played that when that movie came out, and that was actually a pretty well done first person. Uh, it had first person shooter elements where you played as the main human character Jack, and that was divided into segments where you played King Kong fighting all the other dinosaurs and creatures on the island. And for what it
Mhm.
was, that was actually a very good movie based game.
Yeah, it's still a game that gets widely praised by people who just by both kaiju fans and video game players of this day. So
Hmm.
it's a shame that some like licensed video games or licensed tie-in video games, I should say, don't get the same kind of remakes or remasterings that more original titles get. But I think that one would be an excellent candidate.
Hmm. Oh, sounds like
Unless
Joe
you,
has played the game. He says the Peter Jackson King Kong game's underrated for sure. Yes, it
mhm.
is. And one more I'll throw out
I
there is
especially love the part where they use PNGs of just a still King Kong to show his facial expressions. Oh wait, that's a different King Kong game. Never mind.
yeah. And one more kaiju game I'll throw out there is Shadow of the Colossus. That came out in 2005, and
Mhm.
that's well. audience, for those of you who don't know, Raph, he's never been a big video gamer aside from is it like the Mega Man games you played with your brothers growing up, Raph, when you guys were little? Those were pretty much the only games you got into.
Yeah.
So yeah, Raph can't really comment because he's not much of a gamer, but yeah.
No, boo-hoo, whatever. Take it away, Game Boy.
Yeah. I'm sure you've probably heard of this game though, Raph, Shadow of the Colossus. It was kind of what I want to say an artsy game, but you played as this character who we don't apparently his name is Wander, but he's in this big vast valley where he goes around killing these colossi that some of them pretty much are kaiju sized, and
Yeah.
in order
Well,
to try to revive his love or his dead, it's kind of ambiguous. They never really say if she's his lover, a sister, or whatever. But yeah.
Well, it's definitely a video. I know a lot of people have made the argument that the video game is fantasy and not related to kaiju, but seeing that the giant monsters are a forefront element of the whole game, it definitely is at the very least kaiju adjacent, but it's definitely a giant monster video game. And I know the person behind it tried to do something similar with a game named Trico, where it's a little boy and his pet giant griffin creature.
That's the name of the creature. The actual game is called The Last Guardian.
yes, and the monster itself the creature itself, I should say, is called Trico. So yeah, I'm familiar with the games. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of video games with giant monster elements in them, but not many where the giant monsters are the focal point of the whole game. So Shadow of the Colossus definitely ranks right up there. So
yep. Alrighty, back onto the topic of the suits. After all the video game talk, we're on to my favorites of the Millennium suits. Well, for this, I do have kind of a visual aid. I picked up this guy last week. It's from one of my local FYE shops. I believe this is a toy of the Godzilla 2000 design. I do have a lot of nostalgia for the Godzilla 2000 design since I actually saw that movie in the theaters when it came out with my dad, and I was only about 8 years old. And I just thought the suit looked so cool, especially the protracted spines along the back here, which they actually did a pretty good job emulating that with this figure here. Yeah, that definitely fit the definition of a big, bulky Godzilla who looked like he could really wreck someone in a fight. And like you said, excuse me, my voice is getting a little hoarse. Yeah, like you said, Raph, the suit used in both the Kiryu Saga movies against Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS, that is a lot like the 2000 suit, but more slimmed down, and that's also a very cool looking suit. And yes, the GMK suit as well. That's a very cool looking suit as well. Until Shin Godzilla came around, the GMK Godzilla was definitely the most evil looking Godzilla you could find. And I don't quite feel as strongly about the Final War suit as you do. I think my main problem with the suit is mostly the face. I think it's kind of ratty looking in the face, if you know what I mean. But otherwise, I don't hate the suit. I do get why a lot of people love that suit. And yeah, if I was to pick one favorite suit from the Millennium era, it'd probably be the 2000 suit based on nostalgia alone. And in second place would be the GMK suit because it's just a very cool looking quintessential evil Godzilla. So yeah, after that we'll move on to the final era, which is the current ongoing era, the Reiwa era. Go ahead, Raph, on what your favorite. Well, we can't say suits here in the Reiwa era now because they're unfortunately seem to be a thing of the past for the most part. But yeah, what's your favorite Reiwa era designs, Raph?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna count both the live action movies and also the animated stuff. And we're we're really just talking about designs and incarnations. But Shin Godzilla has really kind of grown on me. It's like, yeah, when I first saw the costume, I was a little disappointed. Well, the design, I was a little disappointed because the guy who designed Shin Godzilla, I forget his name, unfortunately. He did a lot of the really awesome monster redesigns in the otherwise underwhelming Ultraman Powered series. So I was expecting something a lot more fearsome and for lack of a better term, just cool and kick ass. But then we get this weird little mutant salamander looking thing. But with that
when I
said,
first when I first
yeah,
saw it, I thought it looked like what would happen if Godzilla became a zombie. It looked like he was he's infected with a zombie virus and was decaying or something.
yeah, no, I was just reminded of just like giant Japanese salamanders and their very bizarre small eyes and flat faces and mouths. Yeah, there was, there was obviously some scary connections to an undead burnt body, but that's what I basically saw, like Godzilla with a salamander head. But the design has grown on me immensely recently. I don't think the design works outside of the movie itself. I know there's been like weird versions where Shin Godzilla is like portrayed as a hero or a fighter, and I really don't see that design working out in that regard.
Me
Um,
neither. Yeah.
yeah. It's like granted, it like Godzilla meets Evangelion short film / ride is a really fun. But yeah, it's like at the same time, it's like Shin Godzilla leading the charge against and transforms into a toy and all that. It's a little bit of a disconnect. So it's like it's like you have all these beautiful. I don't know. It's like it to me. It's as weird as like the background extras in Space Jam 2. It's like you have the characters from Wizard of Oz next to the rapists from a Clockwork Orange. It's like, no, that doesn't really work, does it? But yeah, Shin Godzilla has definitely grown on me immensely. And with that said, the recent minus zero Godzilla is definitely a winning design. I do agree that the design can easily be mistaken for one of the American Godzillas, depending on what shot you're looking at. But for the most part, it's a really good design. It stands on its own. I've seen the movie 3 times already, 2 with friends, 1 by myself recently. And it's like I love how you can find like weird little details in the monster every time you show it. Like I didn't realize how messed up his skin was, or that, when he actually uses his fire breath, he's one of the few Godzillas he needs that regenerative abilities because he actually burns himself every time he uses it. I love the
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
even pick up on that. Huh.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on that until I saw it. And of course, to quote Double Toasted, he has those wonderful "I'm gonna get you, bitch" eyes. Yeah, it's like I love how it's like granted, I know a lot of people say that this is the most evil Godzilla, but I would not say that because motivation and story wise, it's obvious that this is the most angry Godzilla, the most raging
Mhm.
Godzilla.
Yeah,
GM
I'd agree
yeah,
with that.
yeah, GMK and maybe to a lesser extent Godzilla Earth definitely wins the awards for most villainous Godzillas. But yeah, the minus one is definitely really good. And Shin Godzilla, like minus one Godzilla is a Godzilla who's definitely so angry at humanity. You can see that rage both in his design and his interact and in his face. Shin Godzilla, I think you mentioned it best. Him being sort of an injured undead zombie works beautifully. And of course, he's just in horrific pain and can't handle himself around the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Okay, so and with that says, even knowing that I know again, I have a preference for experimentation in the Godzilla franchise, and while I like to see something a little more dynamic and out of nowhere in the future, which we did ultimately get with Shin Godzilla, so I'm appreciative of that. I don't dislike Godzilla Earth and Godzilla Ultima as much as many other fans. Although I do
Mhm.
have to, yeah, it's like I do like the really weird idea that Godzilla Earth is more plant based than animal based. That
Mhm.
he's basically a super tree if it evolved immediately. So like some sort of sci-fi nightmare take on an Ent from Lord of the Rings. So
Mhm.
that's a
Yeah.
really that's a really cool idea. It's a shame about the rest of the movie, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah,
And
we'll get to that.
yeah, and I actually think a lot of the redesigns for monsters in Godzilla Singular Point are fantastic. Very outside the box, but also also kind of weirdly true to the original designs in many regards. So it's both
Especially with Shangri-La.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's both innovation and homage rolled into one. But at the same time though, Godzilla Ultima, yeah, Godzilla Ultima is really cool looking in his own right, but I have to say he's probably the winner for having the biggest butt of all Godzillas. No thunder thighs there. Like I remember I did a really terrible joke where I just like a terrible sketch where I just called it Budunkasaurus, and it was just I won't go into more detail about that.
Yoko Higuchi, another member of the Godzilla community who I know and respect. He got a trend started on back when it used to be called X, but you and I still call it Twitter, so whatever.
Yeah,
He got
no, like I'm just gonna say this out loud, considering what Elon Musk, who he is, and the insanity that he's brought to Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I refuse to do it just based on that. And plus, there's so many websites and companies called X that it's the equivalent of calling your company the, and then everyone is expected just to go along with it. It's no, no.
right.
So yeah, that's my argument.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was getting to was Yoko Higuchi. I remember when that episode came out. Yoko got a trend going where we said hashtag dump truck Godzilla for Godzilla Ultima, and I played along with that, and Yoko saw it and he retweeted it, and so
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I thought that was funny to tie into about Badonkazilla that you were calling him.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like hold on. Let me see if that horrible gag picture is available online, and maybe I'll share it. So
Uh oh.
I can't find it. Yeah, I think the world's a better place.
Probably.
Okay, but yeah, even poor Godzilla looked terrified by his new giant butts. But yeah, and it's like, and while I was disappointed that we didn't get proper returns of Varan and Titanosaurus, the idea that Godzilla went through these extreme dinosaur related evolutionary states were actually really cool in their own right. And
Mhm.
while I'm not that excited or invested in the idea of a second season for Singular Point, it would be cool if it's like we meet other Godzilla like monsters, but ones whose forms evolved from the different variations. So you could still get a Titanosaurus, you can still get a Varan. There's just they're just ones that evolved differently from Godzilla Ultima. So
Mhm.
all right, but
Yeah.
that's all I'm going to say on the Reiwa era.
Alrighty. If I was to pick a favorite design from the Reiwa era, my top choice would probably be -1. It could be recency bias, but I don't know. That's what I always thought I wanted to see, something like that from a new Godzilla era, and I thought -1 just fit that to a T.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's definitely the most angriest looking Godzilla. Yeah, I agree with that. I think Shin might be the most evil looking aside from GMK, but yeah,
I don't now think
that's
Yeah, no, I
go
think it
ahead.
would be like, considering that Shin Godzilla isn't inherently evil, but he is definitely, I think, a better way to describe Shin Godzilla, and you can agree with this or not, but or take it and roll with it, but he's the most nightmarish Godzilla. Now that I think
Yes,
about it,
that I
yes, there's
agree with. Yeah.
yes, it's like very creepy, very nightmarish, very almost abstract and surreal in that regard.
Hmm.
So yeah, because GMK Godzilla just screams pure villainy.
Yeah.
Shin Godzilla just feels like a horrific nightmare, even knowing the creature's motivations and personality is more tragic.
Hmm.
And -1 is he's a mean little bastard. It's like I love a lot of the Japanese meme fan art where it's like you have -1 Godzilla is like this like terrifying mini me next to the other Godzillas. So yeah, it's like, oh, like it's like, what is it, regular American Godzilla drops him off at school, and then there's like 2 hours later the school's on fire and he's like back with like a big A on his homework. So something like
I
that.
just
So
school.
yeah.
Yeah. And if I was to pick a runner up, I guess I'd say the MonsterVerse Legendary Godzilla is. I am a little fond of it, of that design too. It looks like From what I understand, when they were first designing Legendary Godzilla for when 2014 was in development, they wanted to borrow from like grizzly bears and Komodo dragons to give him
Hmm.
that very big burly look. And then I think they also wanted to buy. They said they bought from like bald eagles because they wanted to have him have that like kind of confident but fierce look in his face. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
'cause,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, if we're counting the American Godzillas, like I don't mind the legendary Godzilla, but I think the first time they introduced the design back in 2014, it definitely was a lot more impressive, especially with that eagle-like profile he had.
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan when they kind of just take the character to more crocodilian, reptilian routes, like they did with Godzilla, like Godzilla X Kong or whatever the heck we're calling it this week. So yeah, yeah, that's all I got to say on the legendary Godzilla.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. And now I guess we'll move on to our least favorite Godzilla designs. This should be fun. Go ahead and take it away, Raph.
Mm, God, there's really nothing much there to say. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the ugly crocodilian Godzilla from Godzilla X Kong. And
Mhm.
I'm not talking about the pink stuff. I'm okay with the different colorization of Godzilla. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just yeah, he just looked too ugly and too unappealing in that movie. And it was really just a lot of changes in the face area too.
mhm.
Yeah, it looked like his face was constantly cracking apart. That's how hideous they made him. So, um, what other Godzillas are well, I already mentioned it's like the Heisei Godzillas, even though it's more or less the same design, some of those suits look pretty terrible in my opinion. It may
Mhm.
just be a personal preference or they're just filmed in a much worse way than they were in Biollante. Because yeah, so it's like for example, I think but with that says, as bad as like I think Godzilla vs King Ghidorah, the Godzilla featured in King Ghidorah looks, which just feels like a ragged secondary version of the Biollante costume covered in dirt.
And with
It's
a bigger chest.
yeah, a bigger chest. It's nowhere near as bad as what some of the decaying costumes in Godzilla versus the Showa era Godzilla films.
Oh
Because
yeah.
yeah, because it's like the most embarrassing examples I think are just the barely hanging on versions of Godzilla, literally and figuratively in Gigan and Sea Monster. And it's a shame too
Yeah.
because I like Sea Monster a lot as a film. I actually have a soft spot for Gigan, even though it's not one of the strongest Godzilla films. I will admit that. But
Mhm.
yeah, the
I'll agree with
costume
that. Yeah.
yeah, but the costumes are just so ragged in those. It's like you're just embarrassing yourselves, guys.
Yeah,
Like I
if you look closely, you can literally see parts of the suit flying off during some of the fight scenes in Godzilla versus Gigan.
exactly, and it's like and it takes a lot of the dramatic punch because they build up to Godzilla as this major threat slash salvation in Sea Monster. But when he shows up, it's like, ooh, that costume's so terrible. Can we see the beautiful lobster prop again? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of problems with when the Godzilla costumes are that bad looking.
Hmm.
Um, I've
Uh,
yeah,
quick
it's like
movie.
I can say good things about the other Godzilla costumes, even knowing that they may not be my favorites. Like Gigantus the Fire Monster has a goofy face, but the body is like a really excellent slimmed down version of the 54 Godzilla.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like Godzilla Earth isn't one of my all favorite what isn't really a favorite Godzilla of mine, but I do love the weird ideas and concepts behind the character.
Hmm.
Um,
Our good mutual friend Matt Burkett, he's a big lover of Godzilla Earth. I'm not sure
yeah,
why, but yeah.
yeah, no, he enjoys it more because he enjoys it more on the sci-fi space tragedy level as far as the story is concerned.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would like to kind of pick his brains and see what he thinks about just the movies in general because I know he's done a couple of videos and thank goodness he has been a very good champion to the anime trilogy. I think the
Hmm.
anime trilogy, like I don't mind some of the weird monster ideas they got going on in there. Like I've come to love the weirdness of Mechagodzilla City. The whole city's alive. That's something we've never really seen in a Godzilla movie before. And plus, there's so many different flavors of Mechagodzilla. I'm okay with something that really outside of the tried and true traditions. But oh, wait a minute, I forgot to mention the best version of Godzilla of all, Kiru. If you think about it, he's a Mechagodzilla and a Godzilla rolled in one because he's the cyborg resurrection of the original 54 Godzilla.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because the other Mechagodzillas are just robot doppelgangers, or imposters that are technically not Godzillas at all. But yeah, Kiru. Yeah, no, definitely put Kiru on top because he is one of my all-time favorite top 10 Godzilla monsters, period. Because he has a beautiful looking design. He's a really cool take on a pre-existing character while still standing in his own character. And yeah, the whole detail that he's the 54 Godzilla going through his own anime style redemption arc, really appeals to me. So yeah, let's give Kiro a big round of applause. And with that said, I'm not going to be too mean spirited to the '98 Godzilla. Because in recent years we've seen the character work really well as its own monster separate from Godzilla. I love what Matt Frank did with Zilla. Well, okay, first off, I will make it clear that I don't believe in like Zilla and American Godzilla or Godzilla '98 are technically separate characters as far as merchandising goes with Toho. But I do love the idea that they took the American Godzilla and reinterpreted him as his own standalone monster. And with that says, as such, I think we've had a lot more fun with the character. Matt Frank did a really good job with Zilla in the IDW Rulers of Earth comics. First off, he draws them beautifully, giving the creature actually a lot more personality, and also gave a chance to show what the monster could do as a fighter in his own right. And also, I also love that Zilla's presence is actually used as a pretty horrific quota in the Monster Apocalypse novels. They take the multiplying factor of the original American Godzilla and like turns it up to 11. Basically, what would happen if that movie ended on a darker note with that character? New York.
I'm not too familiar with these apocalypse novels.
Yeah, they're prequel novels to the anime trilogy on Netflix. And basically, I know Wikizilla did like 2 really good videos covering the events of the novels, so I would highly recommend them. But basically, the makers of the novels went crazy, just introducing every Toho monster they could imagine, and reimagining just how horrible these creatures could be if they were left unchecked. So basically, Zilla shows up in New York, kills thousands of people, and then it starts reproducing, and suddenly New York gets so overrun by baby Zillas and other full semi-grown Zillas that they just have to nuke New York and Manhattan off the face of the earth. So before the creatures spread even further. So it's like sort of like a Raccoon City situation. Yeah, and I also love that they play around making a smaller but more terrifying version of Gabra and the insane hero arc that they gave Gigan in those books. So yeah, it's like I've never read the books, but just there's, like I said, Wikizilla did a really good 2-part video talking about how those books went, and it's a lot more entertaining. It's one of those spin-off media things that we see all the time in American big budget movies. Like, why didn't we get a movie version of that really cool book that's the spin-off of the main movie instead of what we got with the main movie? But yeah, the Monster Apocalypse novels. But yeah, with that says, yeah, there's, other than the decaying Godzilla suits and big-breasted 91 Godzilla, yeah, I really got nothing bad to say about any of the Godzillas. But getting back to American Godzilla, that version of the monster kind of sucks, but when you separate it from Godzilla as its own kaiju, it works incredibly well. And as with a lot of things in animation, the cartoon version of American Godzilla, or Godzilla Jr., as in the Godzilla the animated series, is definitely an improvement immensely. So okay, just I was thinking about it. I have a big preference for the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla. But I do admit that design is very simplistic, so I can't be too harsh on it. But I really don't have much of love for
Hey,
the
Godzilla.
yes, I don't have too much love for the Heisei, I mean the Marvel Comics Godzilla, because the design is never consistent. Like I guess it's a situation with the artist. Like there's some illustrations and comic panels where that monster looks utterly spectacular. Like the cover where it's just fighting Red Rowan alone. But then there's other times where the monster looks like somebody's like really crappy bootleg version of the Shogun Warrior Godzilla toy. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Marvel Comics Godzilla, although I am looking forward to the omnibus collection we're supposed to be getting next year. So
Hmm. Yeah, I never dabbled much into the Marvel Comics Godzilla. That's never had the opportunity to. It sounds like it wasn't exactly very true to Godzilla from what I've heard about it. And Godzilla even got mutated and looked like a completely different monster towards the end of the run from what I've heard.
that did not happen. That did not happen in the original comic book. That was something Marvel
Oh,
did like many years after the fact.
oh,
Yeah, no, it's like I think at that point they decided just to end the series because of low sales, and that's when they had the pretty underwhelming meeting with the West Coast Avengers or something. But yeah, no, it's just the weird dinosaur with the Stegosaurus backs and the red eyes. It just like I said, sometimes it's drawn beautifully, other times it just looks just goddamn awful. Like oh yeah, somebody doesn't know how to draw dinosaurs. So.
Duke has a quick comment to say. He says he's not that much of a fan of the Marvel Godzilla, but we'll check out the omnibus.
Oh yeah. Well, my quick opinions on the Marvel Godzilla comics, like it started out a lot of fun. It's like, it's like Godzilla comics inspired by like the world of Godzilla. And there are some really fun monsters in the series. Like I really love the Mega Monsters, the trio of bizarre alien villains that Godzilla fights. But then halfway into the series, and I don't know if this was just the writers losing interest in having Godzilla face against other monster opponents, but they just started just having Godzilla face off against very underwhelming odds. Like, ooh, Godzilla fights road cow rustlers. Godzilla goes to Las Vegas and gets his mind temporarily taken over by a desperate gambler. It's like, it's like Godzilla fights the Fantastic Four, but doesn't really do anything other than mess around in a museum. So yeah, the first half of the Marvel Godzilla is a lot of fun. The second half is okay. No one wants to put any love in this at all. So let's just end this as soon as possible. And it's so funny too. It's so funny too because around the same time in the 1970s, there was sort of a mini monster boom in America. Thanks to a lot of late night horror movie at Saturday afternoon or late night horror movie shows. So that's when you had like as well as like syndicated reruns of the Addams Families and the Munsters and Godzilla, of course. And that's when Marvel was reprinting a lot of their monster comics from the 1960s. So it's a shame we never like if they were smarter about it, and I don't know why they never thought of it. Why not have Godzilla actually fight Fing Fang Foom or It the Living Colossus? Or a lot of the really fun and silly monsters that Marvel were making in the early '60s. I would have loved to have seen Godzilla take on Dragoon, the Flaming Invader, which is my favorite Marvel monster of all time.
Hmm.
Who's basically a two-bit Crinimal, but he's from another planet. He's 200 feet and he's made of fire. So when he goes to Earth, he thinks he's literally hot stuff, and he is. Until mankind discovers a way to get him off the planet Earth without having him accidentally destroyed in turn. So, but yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. The Marvel Godzilla is it's there. It exists. That's all I can say.
The Marvel kaiju monster character I've been interested in reading is Devil Dinosaur. He sounds like he's kind of a cool character from what I've heard about him.
Yeah, I'm happy.
If you're
Yeah,
familiar with him.
oh yeah, no, Devil Dinosaur is a lot of fun. So much so that I'm happy that the character is so damn appealing that even in modern Marvel comics where monstrous opponents take a massive back seat, there is still a general love for Devil Dinosaur. And while I've heard a lot of good things about the animated series, I do know that the Devil Dinosaur in that series takes a back seat to the more human-sized heroes and their shenanigans. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no,
I've
no, I'm
heard that
no,
too.
no, yeah, but no, I've heard a lot of good things about the series regardless. But no, I'm glad the Devil Dinosaur is still greatly loved. And during that second half of the Godzilla comic book series, the 2-issue crossover where Godzilla accidentally goes back in time and teams up with Devil Dinosaur and his human friend Moon Boy. I don't know why they call him Moon Boy.
That actually did happen, huh?
Yes, that did happen. So yeah, Devil Dinosaur is a part of the Godzilla franchise, in a way. But yeah, no, Devil Dinosaur is really cool, and that two-parter where he teams up with Devil Dinosaur and Moon Boy is actually one of the better stories from the Marvel Comics Godzilla.
Huh.
So
I'll for sure have to hunt down that sometime.
yeah,
Yeah.
wonders of the internet.
Anyway, okay. On to my least favorite
Yes.
Godzilla design. Um, if I had to pick for number one, it's probably based on the face alone. It'd probably be the Raids Again design.
Hmm.
It's when you see the Raids Again's face from the front angle, it's just it's very derpy looking. Doesn't and all Target looks like a wet cat, a cat that's soaked from head to toe, the way cats can sometimes look whenever they get wet. That's kind of what I think of when I see the Raids Again face.
Yes, yes. It's like it's so ridiculous. How about we do a analog horror series based on that? I hope it doesn't explode in our face.
About what you said with how it looked pretty slimmed down when you were briefly talking about it, I believe they intentionally did that to make so that since Godzilla was going to be fighting Anguirus in that movie, and I guess Ryo Nakajima said that the original 54 suit was really heavy and cumbersome. He wasn't able to walk around very well in it since this new Godzilla suit was going to be fighting a different monster. I guess they intentionally made it a little more light so that he could move better, so that it would fit the fight
Hmm.
choreography better. And the fight choreography in Godzilla Raids Again, it's very love it or hate it, depending on the person you ask about that movie. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's like I know what they were trying to do in theory, even though it was born from a very terrible mistake. And I would have loved to have seen them kind of reincorporate that fast motion for like smaller size monsters in other films. But
Mhm,
yeah,
yeah,
but for the most part, I think it's sort of a misfire as far as the execution goes. So
yeah. Yeah, and years ago, I maybe would have said the Son of Godzilla suit was my least favorite suit, but I've kind of come around to it in recent years. Yeah,
hmm.
I definitely wouldn't say it's one of my favorite suits, but when I look at it, they're really, in Son of Godzilla, they're really going for trying to make Godzilla be a heroic father figure. And I think when you look in his eyes, I think he kind of has that kind of warm look in his eyes that I think does kind of work for the father angle they're going for. So yeah, it's still not one of my favorite suits, but the Son of Godzilla suit I have sort of come around to in recent years is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I know that the weird story behind the Son of Godzilla suit was that it was supposed to be played by a different actor altogether, a much taller size actor. So that way the difference between Manila and Godzilla would have been much more extreme. But then that
Mhm.
taller actor bowed out or got sick at the last moment, and they just had Haru Nakajima wear the Godzilla suit. And that's why that Godzilla is a little on the flumpy side, which is a shame because I would have loved to have seen what it would have looked like if it did have that taller actor in it. Would have, but with that said, um, all that aside, that Godzilla has like the longest face imaginable. It's a tall face, and it's almost kind of
Yes, it
unappealing in
does.
certain shots. Yeah, but I can see why. Yeah, it's like not exactly my least favorite, but I can see.
Mhm.
That's all I'll say.
Doomzilla briefly touches on it. He in the comments he goes, "I don't mind the Son of Godzilla suit. It does fit the film well." Yeah, I agree.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Good point,
Eh,
Doomzilla.
yeah.
And hello, Doomzilla.
Okay. Yep.
I
Good to see you
invaded
here
I
again, Doom.
invaded another stream.
Okay, we've gone through our suits, so now we'll go through some of our favorite movies. With what Derek and I did, I'll do it a little
Okay.
differently. We just said what our favorite movies from each era were. Because we both kind of cheated and said a bunch of different movies. We're gonna try to limit it to three. So we'll each say what our top three favorite Showa era Godzilla movies are, and go ahead, Raph, since you're the guest, take it away and tell us what yours are first.
Well, as the guest, I'd like to get a drink because my throat's getting parched.
I actually need to do that too.
Okay, so yeah, we'll take like a 30-second to a minute intermission where we're just gonna leave and get drinks. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't go anywhere, Doom. Looks like I'm back before Raph.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
All right. Is somebody watching TV in the background?
Oh, that's my dad, yes.
Okay. Just curious. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so my top 3 favorite Godzilla movies.
From the Showa era.
Oh, the Showa era. Okay, that makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
Number 1, I am a big fan of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, aka Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. I just think it's so weird and darkly kooky in its own right. Like it's
There's no
very
other Godzilla movie quite like it.
yeah. It's bizarrely ambitious and sort of like a kind of like nightmare a dark little horror movie for the Sesame Street crowd. And there's a lot of just bizarre artistic flourishes to it, as well as having my all-time favorite kaiju period Hedorah in it. So yeah, that's my number 1 Showa era Godzilla. I've what's the second one? Sorry about that. I just had yeah.
It's all right.
Yes. One of the 1970s. I'm gonna put Jeter the Three-Headed Monster in there because I think that's a very kind of classy Godzilla movie. A good mix between the campiness of the 70s to come and the kind of slightly more serious narratives of the 1960s before. So yeah, Jeter the Three-Headed Monster, and plus you get 4 really fun monsters, the 4 classic Toho monsters in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And
it kind of feels like that has a little bit of a 60s James Bond kind of feel to it too, with the political intrigue going on with the princess and the assassins following her around.
Yes. Okay. And I like Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster a lot, but if I had to go for like the kind of Godzilla movie I could revisit anytime. Ooh, gotta think here. No offense to 1954. 1954 will always remain the standard.
Yeah. I'm 54. I'm not going to include it because it's the obvious best Godzilla movie from the Showa era. But
yeah. I don't know. It's like if it's down to a choice between Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla or Godzilla versus Mothra. And if I had to pick one or the other, I think I might give the edge to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. So yeah, my top choices will be Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Jeter the Three-Headed Monster, and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 1974. Because Godzilla 1974, Mechagodzilla 1974, I should say. That movie has just kind of a really cool 70s feels to it. Like, granted, it is definitely It is definitely the most among one of the more low budget Godzilla films, but it doesn't overuse stock footage like Gigan does, and it's not almost pathetically Power Ranger level kids show budget that Megalon was. Even though that I actually get a lot of fun out of Megalon. With that says though, I will concede and say Terra Mecha Godzilla is a superior movie and is a high note to end the show era on. But Mecha Godzilla is just a lot of fun. So yeah, those would be my top choices: Hedorah, Ghidorah, Mecha Godzilla 74.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. On to mine. For number 3, I think I'll say King Kong versus Godzilla. Like I said earlier on in the stream, that was one of the first Godzilla movies I owned on VHS. So there's a lot of sentimentality for that movie with me, and it's very fun.
Yes, it is.
It's not perfect. I will say, since I saw the original King Kong around the same time as I was first starting to see the Godzilla movies, it did bother me when I saw. Even as a kid, I thought the King Kong suit looked kind of pretty bad in King Kong versus Godzilla. But besides that, since having recently been able to see the Japanese version recently, now that that's available in the Criterion collection, I've watched that, and that I would definitely say. Although I still have some nostalgia from hearing the Creature from the Black Lagoon theme at some certain points in King Kong versus Godzilla American Cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, other than that, I would say the Japanese version is the superior version, and that's just an all-time fun movie for me. I can just put that in, get taken back to being a kid, and have a good time with it. And the final fight's not bad. It's a pretty fun monster fight.
Yeah, and it's like I'm one of those Godzilla fans who don't mind King Kong at all. I love King Kong as much as I love Godzilla. So,
Same here.
Yeah, granted that costume could have been a lot better, but at the same time, it's fun to see some of the shenanigans King Kong gets up into.
For my second pick, I think I'll go with the other Godzilla movie that I first owned on VHS, that being Godzilla versus Monster Zero. Aside from Mothra versus Godzilla, I always thought Monster Zero was like the quintessential '60s Godzilla movie. It's colorful, it's fun, it's well scripted, and it has some great performances from some of the most notable actors to ever star in the franchise, like Kumi Mizuno as the ill-fated Exilian woman Namikawa. That probably wasn't her actual name. It was probably some Zillion name.
Yeah.
And of course the always reliable gosh darn it, I hate when I do this.
Nick Adams? Or Akira Takarada.
Akira Takarada, yes. Akira Takarada. So he's always on his game, and Nick Adams, he brought something special to it, I thought.
Yeah, Nick Adams, I've always loved Nick Adams. And if this was top 3 Showa era Toho sci-fi movies outside of Godzilla, Frankenstein Conquers the World, it would definitely be a winner. I love that movie even more so than the more popular War of the Gargantuas. But with that says, Nick Adams brought an enthusiasm to his appearances in Japanese films that I think other American actors in these same films kind of lacked, unfortunately. And then,
especially Russ Tamblyn in War of the Gargantuas.
Yeah, like no offense to Russ Tamblyn, like I'm glad he's rediscovered the movie and he seems like a really awesome guy in real life. But yeah, he seems like
he's really changed his mind and is actually proud of his work in that movie nowadays.
Yes, and I know that Rex Reason, the star of King Kong Escapes, did a similar thing too. But I guess that's just because you star in these movies you don't think much about, and it's the one you most love, and then hopefully with hindsight you revisit these films and find out they're actually much better than the reputation was. But Nick Adams always had that weird enthusiasm, and it's almost a shame he's never shown up in more Godzilla or Japanese monster movies. Although there is the third film he made for Toho called The Killing Bottle, which is more of a crime caper from the 60s.
Yeah, I never heard of that one.
So when he went to Japan, he did 3 movies because those were AIP co-productions, or UPA co-productions. UPA was the one who co-produced a lot of Godzilla movies in the 60s. That's one of the reasons we ended up with Astro Monster. That was basically a half American made movie. to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
So Nick Adams made, of course, Astro Monsters, Frankenstein Conquers the World, and a third movie called The Killing Bottle, which is sort of like a low-key crime thriller / James Bond type film. Unfortunately, that third film has never been released into America, and I don't even think there's really a fan subtitled version of it yet. But we'll see what happens. So, and I would like to see what The Killing Bottle is like, just because of Nick Adams and Toho being connected. So,
Yeah, this is my first time hearing about this, and I'd be interested in checking that out.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Monster Zero. It's very space age sci-fi and unique in tone from all the other Godzilla films that came out around that time, and it's one of the few movies I actually prefer watching in the English dub, just because I love hearing Nick Adams's performance did not be dubbed over by a Japanese actor. I love hearing him, especially the famous "You rats" line.
Tell me about it, baby.
I got big news for you, pal. And for my third pick, picking for the Showa era, this is probably the hardest pick for me because the Showa era is the era I really grew up with as a kid. Like I said, seeing the TNT Monster Vision marathons in the early to mid '90s, and they were the first movies I was collecting on VHS too. So yeah. If I have to strain myself and pick one more, I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to say Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 1974.
Yes.
It was the big 20th anniversary Godzilla movie, and just seeing Mechagodzilla with that first moment when he gets revealed, when he melts off the fake Godzilla skin, it's just so cool. It's just such a fist bump moment for me.
Yes, and the music adds to it beautifully. Like Masami Sato, I think that's the name of the composer. He's really underrated in my opinion. Like I know he did the soundtracks for a lot of the 70s Godzillas and nobody likes and some of the lesser island ones from the 60s. But no, I think he brings an incredible energy to his scores. And like I can listen to like a lot of the music he's done all day. It's like no offense, like Akira Kifube will be the master, but Masami Sato is definitely a very close second. So,
yeah, Mechagodzilla is an excellent villain in that movie, and when he the brief battle with Anguirus, I felt so bad for Anguirus with how he just breaks his jaw and the roars the roars Anguirus makes when his jaw is broken. I'm reading a little article here. It's talking about here how with how Godzilla injures Anguirus. It says the monster drama plays out almost like a classic martial arts revenge flick. I do kind of see that connection. The martial arts movies, like Bruce Lee movies, were pretty big and popular around that time, and Godzilla trying to get revenge for Anguirus. It kind of fits that idea, I think.
Yeah, and I also love that it's one of those Godzilla movies that kind of shows like a lot of the genre bending, everything in the kitchen sink mentality these movies have, because you have two dinosaurs fighting a robot alien, and then they're joined by a mythical golem lion god in the final act. It's like on all this while there's like 1970s Japanese spy cop procedural going on as well. So yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had about the movie. So, and Doomzilla has a really good comment. Do you want me to read them?
I'll get to them. Yeah.
Okay.
He says, for me, he'll go Mechagodzilla. It's one cheeseball film that had plenty of fun, made Mechagodzilla have one hell of an impressive debut. Yep, agreed. He also says, for me, the best Showa films, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Invasion of Astro Monster, Hedorah, and the Mechagodzilla duology are the best. Yep, I'd agree with all of those. I feel bad leaving off Mothra vs. Godzilla. That's one I've really come around to as an adult. I don't know if I didn't really appreciate that one as much as a kid, because maybe it's because Godzilla was the bad guy in that movie and it kind of bothered it. I was one of those people who's kind of bothered with how it ends, with Godzilla losing to the two Mothra larvas after he beats the adult Mothra. But nowadays, I think it kind of works. It works as a good underdog kind of victory.
Yeah, and also it's a very classy Godzilla movie. It's like it's not one of my top favorites, but it's the one that I will definitely support and put in the entourage of like just good Godzilla films. Um,
Mhm.
you were asking for personal favorites, and of course, I picked movies that other people don't much care for. But
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Well,
but
sometimes.
with that says
So
though, it is funny how people like the gag about how anticlimactic Godzilla's defeat in Mothra is has been around for ages because when I was growing up, my local Channel 9, um, they used to have a late nights program called Kevin and Bean's Godzilla Theater. And Kevin and Bean are these two radio show hosts who are known here in Los Angeles, but probably not so well known elsewhere. But yeah, and
yeah, this is the first I've ever heard of them.
yeah, and sadly, I never recorded the guest bits outside some really fleeting sequences from Frankenstein Conquers the World. Got to put those on DVD and upload them. But no, they had a gag where they're really like throughout the whole episode where they're watching Godzilla versus Mothra, they're fairly positive about the movie, but then when it ends, they're just on their couch looking at the screen all angry. And it's like, that's it? That's the ending? He gets destroyed by
Yeah.
silly string? And then while they're going to a long diatribe about all the stuff Godzilla survives, they're just spraying the camera with silly string, can after can, until the whole screen is just covered up with silly string. It's like, we'll see you next week. So
Some more of Doomzilla's comments. He goes, I think Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, and Invasion of Astro Monster complement each other well. For Ghidorah, the
mhm.
kaijus are the stars. For Invasion, the humans are the stars, particularly Nick Adams. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good little observation to make there. And that
Yes.
put more emphasis on Mothra versus Godzilla. What makes it great is how people really undermined Mothra, and she really put up an impressive fight against the force of nature that is Godzilla. Yep, that is true.
Mhm.
It was genuinely sad the first time I saw Mothra versus Godzilla when Mothra dies. Her eyes just slowly lose their light and she just stops moving when she lands on her egg at the end of that
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
And
And you do spend time to actually get to know Mothra as as a character somewhat. So yeah, it is honestly sad when she ends up dying. But then you have the big surprise. Oh, she had twins before she died. So,
yeah, Doom also says you got two forces going against each other. One force of nature of destruction and the other of a nature of rebuilding and peaceful. Yep.
mhm.
Yeah, I think that was a big theme Ishiro Honda was going for. Mothra versus Godzilla really does have some strong subtext themes going on under the surface, a lot like
Mhm.
the original Godzilla did. Yeah, yeah, it was hard leaving off Mothra versus Godzilla for me. I do love that movie as well, but the three I mentioned, they're just right here in my heart.
Yeah.
And I briefly like to say Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla '74. That's another one. I also actually like watching in the dub more often because some of the lines are cheesy, but they're just so classic and they always make me laugh. Like the space titanium.
Mhm.
You mean it's from outer space?
Well, you got to be
Okay.
sure not a lot of items on Earth originate in space.
Yeah. If I was to pick a least favorite Showa era Godzilla movie, I'd probably go with Raids again.
Mm.
It's just very bland. This and aside from the monster action, which is of iffy quality, it just feels like that movie's kind of filler to me.
Yeah, I've come to appreciate raids again for what they're trying to do, and it's weird too because a lot of people have made a comparison. Like -1 is the good version of raids again. Um, but with that says, if I had to pick a least favorite Godzilla movie from the Showa era, oh god, it's like I pretty much love all of them. But if I had to pick
Mhm.
the one that I'm not most excited with, or probably the one that is just kind of an okay watch, I think that that somewhat dishonor goes to
The other night, he had 51 tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves.
I don't know.
On record with
It
the best
might
of
be a
the
tie between Destroy All Monsters and Gigan. So
Oh,
because
really?
Yeah, Destroy All Monsters. Yeah, it's a very colorful movie. I love its kind of like, optimistic take on the future, but it's also as a kind of big monster get together, it's a bit of a disappointment. And the human characters, while played by a lot of Toho's most recognizable actors, they not exactly make a very good impression as far as likability or memorability goes. So
Yeah, I can see that.
it's a nice farewell party, but it's a little overblown as a farewell party, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good thing you mentioned that because I've kind of come on to comment on Destroy All Monsters. It feels like it's the finale to what I always thought was the first half of the Showa era of Godzilla
mhm,
movies.
mhm.
Because then after that we got to the 70s and it feels kind of different from the 60s Godzilla movies a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to
Yeah, and
comment on that.
yeah, I know some people might wanna say All Monsters Attack is a low point in the Godzilla franchise, but that movie had such an interesting human element to it, especially since it was actually commenting on real world issues,
Yeah.
latchkey kids and overworked parents and all that, and it's so mercifully short, it's, like, almost an hour in length, like, I can't hate that movie too much, but yeah, Destroy All
Yeah.
Monsters, I think, is a little overblown. It's a movie where if it's playing in on television or through a streaming service, it's good background filler, but it's not exactly my favorite Godzilla movie.
Mhm.
Um, Gigan, there's a lot of things about Gigan I actually like. I think the human characters are much more engaging. I think the aliens are so bizarrely charming, despite the fact that they're secretly giant cockroaches from another world. Um, and Gigan, of course, who doesn't love Gigan? And that was the movie that definitely cemented Anguirus as Godzilla's sidekick. But
Mhm.
it's also a movie where, weirdly enough, I think the human scenes are more entertaining than the actual monster fights, unfortunately.
Huh.
So, yeah, because, yeah, the human characters, like, I don't remember their names, but you still remember them. Manga artist, his badass girlfriend.
Hard
Um,
mix.
yeah. Hippie with a corn dog, cute but um, somewhat shy girlfriend of the hippie, I think, and her imprisoned brother. And I think
Yeah.
the Nebula aliens are a lot of fun. Like these aliens who aren't outright malicious, but they still have plans for the Earth.
Mhm.
It's like it's a shame we have to blow up Godzilla's island, but it's what we're gonna do eventually. So, yeah, it's like and I think I prefer that over just the kind of boring Tlax or just the kind of just monotonous evil of these Zillions.
Mhm.
Although I do appreciate the kind of comic book cruelty of the aliens from the Mechagodzilla movies. So,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's rough. I think it is roughly. It's actually yeah, between Destroy All Monsters and Gigan, if I had to definitively pick one, I think Gigan kind of edges it out because, like I said, some of it goes on a little too long and gets a little boring.
Mhm.
So, like with Destroy All Monsters, yeah, it gets a little boring, but it's still colorful enough where it doesn't really bother me that much. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I still like to watch Destroy All Monsters. It's to me it's still a fun movie, but I get a lot of the criticisms people have with it.
Mhm.
Going to highlight some of Doom's comments here. Like when he was talking about Mothra versus Godzilla, he goes, "Let's not forget of all the kaiju's, Mothra remained the only one who has the most victories against Godzilla. She lives up to the title of queen." Yep, very much
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
And he says, "For me, Destroy All Monsters is the most okay for me. The end's awesome, but most of the film's slow, and the Kilax are lame, smug villains compared to the Exilians." Yeah.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
thing I will be
I think that's
sorry.
the problem with a lot of aliens in Japanese fiction. They're just so smug, they just become either really annoying or just kind of ho-hum boring.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like when I see like I said, it's like the aliens in Godzilla vs. Gigan have a bizarre pleasantness to them that they're almost charming despite their evil plans. And and then the black hole aliens, they're so over the top villainous that they're just a lot of fun to hang around with. So,
Yeah, I love the leader, the Black Williams from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. He's a fun card carrying villain.
yeah, Mogul is his name, and it's like me and Brayton, we joke about that character all the time. It's like, Oh, doctor, you're mistaken. This isn't an interrogation room. It's the execution room.
Yeah, the dub actor, I think he actually did a good job in making that guy sound slimy and villainous in the
Yeah, exactly. So, but one who obviously loves his life.
dub. Dear Godzilla, you're mistaken if you think you're a match for Mechagodzilla.
Well, the secret's out of the bag. Mega Godzilla must be revealed. So,
Alrighty. I think it's time to move on to the Heisei era and talk what our top three favorites are from the Heisei era. You go ahead and go first, Raph.
all right. Definitely Godzilla versus Biollante, number one. I think, yeah, it's like that movie just has a lot of wonderful ambition. And while the story's a little wonky here and there, the ambition, the adventurous nature of it all, and just the gorgeous execution throughout the whole movie definitely makes it work beautifully, I think. That movie is just firing on all cylinders.
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes. It's like it's almost a shame the movie didn't do better because I would have loved to have seen Toho continue its ambitious plans with Mothra versus Beigen and all the other movies they planned afterwards, instead of taking a 2-year break and then trying to restart with Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. And it's a shame too because Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is a lot of fun, but it's definitely kind of stepped down after the first two films we got.
I'd agree.
Yes, and speaking of which, coming in second, right behind Biollante, and very close, I might say, 84, because I really do enjoy just how kind of serious, the kind of epic seriousness that movie has. And it's funny too because after talking with Patrick Galvin in a podcast I did with him, Return of Godzilla, aka Godzilla 1984, was born from Toho's brief stint with big budget disaster films and historical epics. Between 1973 and all the way up to 84, Toho was doing a bunch of like high-end disaster movies and historical epics, which, while they didn't have monsters and major science fiction elements in them, were still very much their special effects films for those eras and made a lot of money. You know, Submersion of Japan, Prophecy of Nostradamus.
I to see Submersion of Japan. I've heard that's a pretty good movie.
Yes. And what else was there? Like some of the movies based on World War II as well, like Japan's Longest Day and whatnot. So yeah, So Return of Godzilla was like a weird, like, to end that era of like big budget disaster films, to revisit the kaiju films of yesteryear was sort of a really neat way to tie it back in. So it's not only a return to the kaiju to a Godzilla movie, but it's Godzilla by the way of the big budget disaster films of Toho in the late 70s and 80s. So, and it has that same kind of wonder, like I said, that big epic feel to it. And while the Godzilla costume doesn't look very good, he has some really great destruction sequences, like especially when he comes out of the water comes out of the water and fights the jets. That's just a really exciting sequence. As well as so, and I it's like, I really do like it. It's like an excellent disaster movie that takes its place itself seriously without getting monotonous about it. And as far as the third choice of favorite Heisei Godzilla movie goes, while King Ghidorah is a lot of fun, and that's definitely kind of a party Godzilla movie to play, I'll give credit to Destroya because it ends the series on a very high note. And Destroyer's a lot of fun as a monster, and I love that both Godzilla and Junior are not in the best places, and I do love how it ties into the past of the Godzilla franchise. So yeah, I think, and you see a little bit of that ambition that started the Heisei era close it out, as opposed to like the films getting a little cheaper with the films in between. So
yeah.
That's my pick.
We're going to have a lot of overlap. And same with Doomzilla. He also said 84, Destroya, and Biollante for me. So, yeah. But yeah, my number one pick is going to be the exact same as yours, Godzilla versus Biollante. I love that movie so much.
Yes.
It's probably still my favorite, more modern Godzilla movie out of all the Godzilla movies we've gotten since the 80s. Just I can rewatch that movie anytime. It's so well shot. I think it has some of the best cinematography out of the whole series and best use of special effects.
Hmm.
I love the scenes out in the ocean when Godzilla's fighting the Super X2. I
Oh
just
yeah,
I just love this.
the
Go
big
ahead.
pool at Toho has never looked so good. So
Yeah, I love how both battles are shot, where Godzilla fights both Biolante's rose form and her big monster crocodile form.
hmm
And yeah, I just and I really do like the human story going on in there too. Kind of like with Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, how that had a little bit of an international spy theme going on. Same thing going on with the whole rush over all the different companies trying to get the G cells.
yes, like I said, the script isn't perfect. There are some wonky elements, like they don't really do a good job explaining what Biomajor's deal and all that. But still, though, yeah, it's just the execution and just the way everything is handled. It's firing on all cylinders, and I enjoy the movie immensely for it. So.
Hmm. Yeah. The whole stuff you'd think it would sound goofy with how Biolante is supposed to be a monster that has the soul of a human woman fused inside it, but I don't know. Somehow they managed to still play it fairly straight and make it work. And
Hmm.
Biolante is just so. Biolante is just such a striking monster to watch, especially
Yeah.
when you see her final form. I still get blown away every time I see that final battle in action.
Yeah, and also now thinking about Biollante is very reminiscent of the biopunk fad that was going on in Japanese fiction throughout the 80s.
Oh,
Where
really? I'm not too familiar with that.
biopunk, it's very much like a play on steampunk, but it refers to like genetic engineering and similar mutations in Japanese fiction. Like the Guyver is a part of the biopunk genre, or Genocyber and tons of anime was dealing with biopunk terminology, Zeram, and similar movies like Moon Over Teo.
Oh
So, as
yeah,
well
I
as
do.
like tons of Japanese horror movies around the same time as well. Where genetic engineering or evolution or mutation gone out of control results in these insane monster creations. And
Mhm.
Biolante is very much in that same school. So, as well as the whole subplot with the Godzilla cells and Godzilla himself. So yeah, that's another element of the gut of Biolante I think is really cool. So
Mhm. Yeah, the human plot. There's just so much going on in it. There's the psychic children, all the international strife, all the
hmm
gunfights, the biotech, and I
hmm
also think the soundtrack is pretty cool and unique too. It's with the
yes.
electric guitar and the fast beats.
Oh yeah, I know a lot of people say it's very derivative of other soundtracks, but I think it's energetic in its own right that it's easy to forgive. So
Yeah, I've heard some people say it kind of sounds like a little bit like a Star Wars soundtrack, and that didn't really bother me. It came out around a little while after the original Star Wars trilogy ended, and these days, as far as Star Wars go, that's kind of the only thing I really like revisiting much these days is just the original trilogy.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, my second. Oh, Doom has a quick comment. He wanted to say, "Heads up, Good Smile announced Super X and Super X2 model kits are coming. By the way,
Oh mate.
interesting." Anyway, my second Heisei Godzilla movie. I'm gonna have to also say '84.
Hmm.
It was a great start to the Godzilla franchise, to restarting it after it stopped in the Showa era, and I put that on the top 10 best Godzilla movies, period, because
Yes.
it's very well made and it conveyed its message very well. It was just as relevant to Japan of what was going on at the time, just like how what was going on back in 1954.
Hmm.
And it's a shame the American cut went and made the Russians flat out villains in that story. It works a lot better how they did it in the original Japanese language version.
Yeah, there's some elements about the Godzilla 1985 that I actually like quite a bit. I do like some of the editing choices and how they kind of ramp up the action and of course Rain Burr is always a delight. Um,
Hmm.
but with that says, yeah, I think the original Japanese version had some like I hope one day we get a perfect Blu-ray where we get both versions of films on the same disc, once
Yeah.
they take care of that weird legal situation. But at the same time, I'm also glad that there's like a really beautiful fan restoration of Godzilla 1984, and currently free on YouTube too, if you know where to look. Yeah, but with that said, yeah, I like both movies very much, and I'm glad that we kind of exist a world where they're not where we can kind of revisit both versions. But I do agree. I like the moral ambiguity of the human characters in the original film a lot more. With like the I love the fact that the Russian commander is a little disappointed that Japan doesn't want to use atomic bombs on Godzilla. But when his ship goes out of control and it might launch an atomic bomb, he's the one who realizes he has to stop it, and unfortunately, he ends up dying doing so. So, yeah, I think I prefer that a little more than what we got in '84. So,
Yeah, and to pick a third pick, I would also agree. I'd also go with Godzilla versus Destroya. It was a good final send off for the Heisei era, and it was emotionally effective to me as a kid. I remember I didn't quite get there, but I almost did cry at the end there when Godzilla started melting down at the end.
mhm,
That has to be such a painful death to go
yeah,
the way he did at the end there, and
mhm,
it's also sad seeing Godzilla Jr. die too.
yeah. I think the presence of Godzilla Jr. definitely helps, for lack of a better term, humanize Godzilla. And you actually
Mhm.
do feel honestly sad for a monster who's mostly been the bad guy in a lot of the Heisei movies. So,
Yeah, a lot of it seeing Mickey cry. Mickey's so cute,
mhm,
and I hate seeing her cry in that movie.
yeah.
Jim's got some comments. He goes, 84 is my personal favorite as it left a lasting impact on me. What made it more special is how I grew up with the 85 cut as Raymond Burr did steal the show, who understood Godzilla's nuclear subtext. Yeah, that's
Mhm,
true.
yeah.
His end speech really sums up Godzilla as a whole. I know he says as a while, but I know Doom meant as a whole.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah, as for all the flaws that '85 has, that ending speech from Raymond Burr basically ties up Godzilla's character more beautifully than even some of the Japanese films, I'd have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that point in '85 where the Americans are watching on the screen what's going on over Japan, and there's that line when one of them goes, "Guess that's quite an urban renewal program they got going on over there, huh?" And Raymond Burr gives him that "you
Mhm.
jerk" look. Like he
Yeah.
probably wasn't even acting there. That was probably how he really thought about that
Oh,
line.
no, I don't think that was an improv line. I think they were deliberate because that character is kinda treated as an idiot that nobody really likes that much by other generals.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that ending speech Renenberg gives over the exploding volcano, I think that's one of the best soliloquies, any movie character could ever have, and like I said, very true to the spirit of what Godzilla represents, so
And Godzilla gives such a blood curdling scream as he falls down into the volcano at the end there. It's just
mhm,
it really leaves an impression on you.
yeah,
Doom briefly talks about little Godzilla. He goes, "Remember that we see the little one grow up since Mechagodzilla 2 is very heartbreaking. We
mhm,
see Junior fight Destroy, and actually winning was awesome, but Destroy is very spiteful at that defeat. Yeah,
yeah.
Destroy is not a very good. He's a pretty sore loser." Alrighty. Now to pick a least favorite Heisei era movie. There's
Oh,
a
yeah,
few candidates, but I think
ye
if I was to pick one, I'd go Godzilla versus Mothra: Battle for Earth. I don't think it's
yeah,
a bad movie, but this might be mostly because I've only seen the English language version. I haven't been able to see the original Japanese language version of that movie yet, and some of the dubs in the Heisei era were pretty bad,
yeah, no,
especially King
you're
Ghidorah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Japanese version of Godzilla versus Mothra is better, but not by much because there really isn't too much of a big difference between the inept, character drama of the, film with what with the original Japanese version, basically. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it's like I said, like, I can forgive Godzilla versus King Ghidorah because it is such a fun, silly movie. even with some of its perplexing creative decisions, like trying to rip off Back to the Future of all movies.
Or the
And
Terminator. Yeah.
yeah, but Terminator 2. But yeah, Godzilla versus Mothra. I can how can I say it? What's the best terminology I can use? Not saccharine. Kind of a little insulting with some of its weird decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's of the Heisei Godzilla films, it's the one I watched the least. Although with that says, I don't really have any real feelings one way or another towards Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2.
Yeah.
That's a Godzilla movie that just I don't really hate it, but I don't remember it whatsoever. So it's like I still get like Space Godzilla and Mothra still can still leave an impression, but Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, there's really nothing there. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty bland.
Yeah, so I'm not really going to give a definitive answer, but I think this is one where I can definitely say Mothra and Mechagodzilla. Although Space Godzilla has some major problems too. Yeah, it's like Space Godzilla is a lot of fun as a villain, but for the most part, the movie just feels so undercooked and bloated, and the human characters are not very likable. Any of them, even Mickey. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really going to pick. I think if I had to pick one, it probably would be Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, but just because that movie leaves no real impression or impact on me at all. So, but objectively, Mothra would probably be the worst movie. So, I don't know. They're all pretty. They're all there.
Yeah, just so.
Yeah.
Jim says he doesn't have one for the Heisei series that he dislikes the most. Says people tend to dog Space Godzilla the most. I don't mind it. Same for Mothra. Yeah, I won't say they're flat out terrible movies, but just compared to the two that the Heisei era started off with, 84 and Biollante, it seems like there was just kind of a drop in quality.
Mm-hmm.
For Space Godzilla in particular, I think some of my issues with it are just since the suits were so top heavy, there wasn't much you could really do with them in terms of fight choreography. That's probably the one that has the most beam spamming out of all the Heisei era movies.
Yeah, like the beam spamming is one problem, but I think the even bigger problem is when Godzilla and Space Godzilla start rolling on skateboards just off camera to move to the other side of the set. So,
Yeah,
that bit's a little silly. So
yeah. Doom says also give Mogira some love. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mogira's pretty cool. Like I think I have more fun with Mogira than the Heisei version of Mechagodzilla. So
yeah, actually wouldn't mind seeing Mogira be used again, either in the MonsterVerse or some other later movie. Alrighty, that brings us to the Millennium Era. Go ahead, Raph, and say what your since the Millennium Era is so short, I guess unless we do really have three movies, we can just say what our favorite movies from the Millennium Era are. So go ahead.
I'll make this as quick as possible. Number one is Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. That's just a very fun movie. Again, it has Kiryu in it, which is like one of my all-time favorite Godzilla characters, period. The human cast is very likable, even the so-called antagonistic human. And it's the final fight scene, while not the most spectacular or earth-shattering Godzilla fight, it's very, very energetic, very fun, and it's probably like the best between Heisei film style. It's like a good mix between Showa era and Heisei style madness in that final battle. Number two, I will give credit to GMK. I think it's a very good Godzilla movie, and one of the few Godzilla movies I introduced to a lot of friends. Of course, I got to tell them ahead of time it's a standalone story, so they're not too upset or weirded out on why Godzilla is so weird and evil in this one. But yeah, I really do. Yeah, I really do like that one quite a bit. I do feel that it kind of drops the ball a little bit in the third act, but other than that, it's a very fun movie. And while While I have a lot of respect for Godzilla 2000 and Godzilla Tokyo SOS, I think number 3, I'm gonna have to say Final Wars. Like, Final
Hmm.
Wars is I don't like using the term guilty pleasure, but as just like a big bombastic party movie, Final Wars is pretty fun. Especially once
Mhm.
like granted, unlike Destroy All Monsters, the disappointment with that one was even bigger. But once you finally because it's supposed to be the 50th anniversary Godzilla film, and you instead end up getting with this like the most 2000 most the 1990s Hollywood action movie that the 1990s never had. But
Yeah.
but once you get past that, it is a pretty fun, silly movie. Once if you go in it on its own terms, it's a pretty fun movie. So,
Mhm. Yeah, Final Wars is definitely a crowd pleaser.
mhm.
Doom says the only weak Millennium films obviously Megaguirus. While the fight was awesome, most of the problems throughout the films is obviously the protagonist's fault. Yeah, I'll touch on Megaguirus when I get to the least favorites, but yeah.
Mhm.
My top pick for favorite Millennium Era movies probably is going to be the same as yours. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. It has a very good human plot. I really do love Akane as a human character, and it also
Mhm.
helps that Yumiko Shaku is a pretty nice looking lady too.
Mhm.
Won't be won't admit about that.
Mhm.
Like you said too, it's a really interesting idea with how Kiryu was created. Wow, he's created off the bones of the original Godzilla. It's probably the most probably the most realistic portrayal of Mechagodzilla I think that there is. Well,
Yeah. Well,
do I
one of
want
the
to
most
count Godzilla
unique.
versus?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a better idea of using a monster based on Mechagodzilla than what they did with Mechagodzilla and Godzilla versus Kong.
Mhm.
I didn't care much for the whole thing because it being. I thought it was an interesting idea, but I didn't really. I don't know. Just use how it was apparently King Ghidorah's brain controlling Mechagodzilla and Godzilla versus Kong. I don't know. That just didn't work for me.
Yeah, I didn't mind the design of Mechagodzilla in that movie. And I didn't mind some of the concepts behind it. I just felt that Mechagodzilla in the Legendary movies was just shoehorned in. Like, I think
Yeah.
the movie would have been better with a more familiar villain, or just suddenly the introduction of Mechagodzilla is a little too much. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and to pick my third favorite Millennium Era movie, it's probably based mostly on nostalgia, but I'd have to say Godzilla 2000. Getting to see that in the theater after pretty disappointing even as a kid. Godzilla 98 was for me. Seeing that in the theater the previous year, it felt like
Mhm.
this is it. This is how a Godzilla movie's supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I do love how it's kind of a low stakes Godzilla movie, but it's still a very entertaining story in its own right. Especially
Hmm.
with reimagining Godzilla as sort of a recurring natural disaster that the various characters are interested in.
Yeah,
And
I really
Orga
like that aspect. The father and
yeah,
daughter character, how they're like storm chasers, but for Godzilla in that movie.
yeah, exactly. It's interest yeah, with Godzilla being more of a more natural phenomenon than just an outright monster that shows up every once in a while. Um, and and Orga is a pretty decent villain too, once you get past the fact that it's just a regular flying saucer that eventually mutates into a monster.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. 2000 was a different kind of take on the alien invasion Godzilla movie compared to what we'd mostly gotten throughout the 60s.
mhm,
Doomzilla says 2000 GMK, the Mecha Godzilla duology, and especially Final Wars are awesome. Yeah, yeah. The Millennium Era is pretty good
yeah.
as like an anthology series, but I guess a lot of Godzilla fans don't. That's apparently some reason a lot of Godzilla fans don't like the Millennium Era, and teach their own.
Mhm,
Doom says his favorite's 2000, mostly because of how awesome it was to see the film the big screen as a child, and we'll say that the dub is the superior version compared to the Japanese version. Still haven't seen the
mhm.
Japanese version of 2000. I've Sean Barry, he's a mutual friend of ours in the Godzilla community. He's the biggest defender of the original Japanese version. I remember that I've seen him say that he actually prefers the Japanese version of Godzilla 2000. He thinks that he thinks we learn more info about the human villain in the story better, and that, and how it's kind of a tragic story with him.
Yeah, yeah. It's unlike the whole situation with Return of Godzilla in '85, though. It's like I'm not too desperate on Godzilla 2000 because fortunately the Blu-ray has both versions of the movie.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do appreciate that we're lucky in that regard. And for the most part, it is one of the stronger Sony releases as far as their Blu Godzilla on Blu-ray is concerned.
Yeah. So, getting to least favorite Millennium Era Mechagodzilla movie. No, I like both Mechagodzilla movies in the Millennium Era. Least favorite Millennium Era Godzilla movie. It's got to be Megaguirus. I
Yeah.
don't hate it, and I remember a mutual friend of ours, Laura Fitkin. She actually is a very big fan of that movie. That's like one of her top favorites. And I remember a while ago, Raf, you did a live stream of the movie with Laura and a few others, and I was able to have fun with the movie then.
Yeah, in retrospect, I think a lot of my disliking for Mechaguirus has to do more with the weird situation behind the movie and how I saw it and had to buy it multiple times. That's a story I don't want to bore anybody with. But with that said, like Mechaguirus herself is a really fun villain. She's definitely one of like I don't like the movie, but she's one of the most fun monsters in the whole Millennium series. And as a movie just to watch with friends and riff with, it's a lot of fun. So with that said, there is some value in Mechaguirus, but it is definitely one of my least favorite of the Millennium movies. Although, if we were to include the '98 American Godzilla film, I think that definitely would count as one of the weaker movies because it's just a lot of Hollywood excess from the era, and the fact that it doesn't take the material too seriously and kind of half-asses the stakes with Godzilla and the state of and the danger it brings. And only that, but it's like Mechaguirus is relatively short compared to Godzilla '98. It's like, granted, Godzilla '98 is a few minutes longer, and the runtimes are more or less virtually the same. But I think Godzilla '98 has like just real big drags of just boring slowness throughout, especially in the later half.
And I never really cared for Matthew Broderick's character or his girlfriend. I found them very annoying to have to deal with their relationship drama.
Yeah, the relationship drama I totally agree with. I don't mind Matthew Broderick's character at all. I think he was definitely one of the more likable elements. And but that's the weird thing. It's like I like some of the human characters in '98, and probably more to the fact that they're connected to actors I generally like in general.
Like Jean Reno, he was the character I liked the most. I wish he could have been the main character, could have followed him, the French Secret Service agent guy.
Yeah, Hank Azaria too. He's a lot of fun in that. And but at the same time, it's like with Mechaguirus, like I really have no liking for any of the human characters in it. They just come off as very antagonistic and equally poorly written and annoying anime, shonen anime extras. So especially with especially with some of their really stupid character decisions. So
yeah.
I think Mechaguirus and Godzilla '98 definitely are the losers in this regard. But like Mechaguirus has some redeeming qualities and is a little more fun. And despite the problems I have with Mechaguirus, the film, Mechaguirus the kaiju is like she's top tier, just really fun, likable villainous. So
Mechaguirus feels in a lot of ways like a rough draft for what we got in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. I believe it was the same director and the same music composer, and they came back and kind of did what they did, but better, in the same similar kind of plot to a female human soldier blames herself for getting her fellow soldiers killed by Godzilla, so kind of has a personal grudge that she holds against him. It just feels like Godzilla against Mechagodzilla just did all that, but a lot better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, no, it's like Godzilla '98, I think definitely kind of fails just because it's boring. So
yeah, it might be my least favorite overall Godzilla movie, Godzilla '98.
Yeah. Okay.
Doomzilla says, And very cool for Laura pick for saying Laura really likes Against Megaguirus. I don't truly hate the film. I find it weird that most of the mistakes the heroes made, yet they never try to correct other than Godzilla. Yep. That's pretty true. Alrighty, now we're moving on to the current ongoing era, the Reiwa era. So go ahead, Raph, and say what your favorite entries in the Reiwa era have been
since
so far.
there's even less movies in the Reiwa era, can we include some of the legendary and animated films in this regard?
Yeah. I generally include the legendary as part of the Reiwa era. Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know what order I would put these in, but I'm just going to say them outright in no particular order. But these are the three. I like Shin Godzilla a lot. I think it's a really cool kind of modern take on a disaster movie with it being a little more sophisticated and science fiction minded. And Shin Godzilla himself has really grown on me as a monster. With that said, though, thank God the dubbed version exists, because it's like I'm glad that it's a decent dub with a lot of really talented anime artists doing the voices, but it definitely saves you from having to read all the wacky subtitles and whatnot that goes on. Because, all the text messages and all that, and also it's like when I try to show the movie to friends, especially ones I know who have a hard time reading subtitles, not because of a preference, but because of health reasons. And that is an issue I think we all have to definitely look into more and more in the near future. But yeah, I'm glad that the dub version is a very good dub version. So big on Funimation for that. I just wish your damn Blu-ray was more affordable. But so yeah, I like Shin Godzilla quite a bit. In a slightly different way, oh damn it, I would have loved to have included Kong Skull Island in this regard, but there's no Godzilla in it other than a cameo at the end. It's a part of the legendary Godzilla universe, and if we were to do a ranking of legendary Godzilla films, I would definitely have to say Godzilla Skull Island would be the #1 winner. But I'm gonna have to say no, unfortunately. So Godzilla -1 is really good. After seeing it 3 times, I think it does stick up quite a bit. Although in retrospect, the monster action is pretty fleeting, but the human drama and just the overall period drama setting and just the way it's executed is very good.
Yeah.
And if I had to pick one of the movies from either the legendary or anime trilogy, which does have Godzilla in it, actually, I think I'd have to go with Godzilla King of the Monsters. I think that was a pretty decent movie for what it was. Its heart was in the right place. I don't agree with all its artistic decisions, but as far as like a big budget, bombastic Godzilla movie that knows the Japanese original films, as well as having a lot of their own kooky and silly characters in it, it was pretty fun. Although again, if I could cheat the rules, I would definitely say Kong Skull Island is the best of the legendary movies. That's my personal. That's like definitely one of my big favorites. Period. So
we do plan on doing a King Kong chat with guests in the future. So maybe when we can get together with Derek and any other guests, that's when we can really touch on Kong Skull Island.
Oh yeah, I would definitely love to be invited to that one if you don't mind. So
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Doom has some comments on. He goes, "Oh, whoops! Can't get to that first." His first pick, he said, was very ironic that most of Reiwa is just the Millennium, yet nobody drops an eye. Oh yeah, about how they're standalone and how people complain about the Millennium era being a lot of standalones. Yep, I get that.
Yeah. Fans are weird that way.
Shin Godzilla was awesome and unfortunately did too good a job that before -1, some entries are okay at best. Yep. As for the Monsterverse, King of the Monster is the best, but my least is GVK. That's probably mine and Raph's too. For the anime trilogy, wasted potential, I will say. Yeah. Yeah. Before I get to the end of the anime trilogy, I'll say what my favorites have been from the Reiwa era. #1 is definitely -1. I ended up loving Godzilla -1. I cannot wait to get it out on Blu-ray now. It was just I went and saw that with my cousin, who's not as big into Godzilla as I am, and she ended up really loving that movie.
Nice. Okay.
The best thing I'd say -1 really has going for it is the human story. The human story is just as compelling as everything going on with whenever Godzilla's on screen.
Hmm. And it also helps
Yeah.
that the special effects sequences are really awesome too. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Second place, I definitely would say Shin Godzilla. That was I remember all the hype going around Shin Godzilla. That was just it's. It seemed like that was a little better than than all the hype that was going around in 2014. Unless that's just my observation.
Yeah. No, I think I don't hate 2014, and I see what they were trying to do. I just wish they executed a little better. But
Mhm.
with that says, yeah, I think Shin Godzilla definitely made up for whatever disappointments 2014 had. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually quite like 2014 quite a bit. I'm one of its defenders, but yeah,
mhm.
yeah. Yeah, and for my third pick, even though I just said I do like 2014, I'd have to say King of the Monsters. Also, my favorite out of the legendary Godzilla focused movies so far.
Yes.
It's the most fun. I really love the King Ghidorah design. It's probably my absolute favorite design for King Ghidorah now. The
Mhm.
legendary design. It just looks so cool. Like that really does look like a big space-headed space dragon from if you were flying through space and all of a sudden you saw that thing coming at you, I'd probably be to pardon my phrase, shitting bricks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely did King Ghidorah justice in that movie. So,
Rodan actually looked cool too, but I didn't like how he just kept getting beat up all the time in that movie.
yeah, that is true. So,
Yeah. And on to least favorite. Oh boy. I'd have to say Godzilla Planet of Monsters. That's the only movie of the anime trilogy I've seen. I so did not like Planet of Monsters so much actually have not gotten around to watching the next two movies because I thought Planet of Monsters was so incredibly boring until the very end.
yeah, that's the problem with the Godzilla anime trilogy. Like I will defend it for what it was trying to do, a very different take on Godzilla within the genre. I just wish the execution was a lot stronger.
Yep,
Um,
I would agree with that.
yeah, and also I think they advertised it terribly because, you don't call a movie Planet of Monsters and it turns out there's just maybe one monster on it. Or I
Yeah.
should say like a clone, like a smaller version of the same monster and a couple of expendable dragons. With that says though, like, I'm happy they still exist. I'm glad they're there. Maybe if it was a Godzilla mini series, it probably would have been better received. And I think Singular Point definitely made up for a lot of the shortcomings of the anime trilogy. And I
I
would
still
like
need
to.
to finish. I still need to finish Singular Point. I dropped off about halfway through, and I need to finish watching that
Yeah,
sometime.
yeah, no, I love Singular Point quite a bit, but I also know why a lot of people don't like Singular Point. So it does go a little crazy on the techno babble, and yeah, so
And
this.
Godzilla's barely in it. He doesn't show up until the very end.
Yes,
Yeah.
but if you love Gabra, Jet Jaguar, and giant spiders, you're in luck. um, okay, so yeah, City on the Edge of Battle, I thought was the strongest of the Godzilla anime trilogy, and I think if all the films had that level of conviction and genuine science fiction edge to it, I think it would have worked a lot better because Planet Eater is a bit of a disappointing slog, and Planet of the Monsters is a good setup, but at the same time, it really shouldn't have been wasted on just the full movie. That should have been like the first half of the movie, and then see where else we could have gone from there. So, but yeah, that's just my opinion. But as far as least favorite Reiwa era Godzilla movie, um, you know, Planet Eater is very close. I think that one is definitely it just reminds me of a lot of things I don't like about overly praised but overrated anime. And the Godzilla, and I know if Andres or Laura was here, they would defend the lead writer of the Godzilla anime trilogy. But I think Goro Ibuchi is a hack. I honestly think he's horrifically overrated. Everyone thinks he's this brilliant genius, and I just see like a really shitty comic book edgelord who if he gets interested in his works, it's rare. So yeah. But as far as like
What else says he worked on besides the anime trilogy that you know of?
Knights of Sidonia, the Magica Madoka thing. I know he did Kamen Rider Game.
I've yet to dip my toes into Kamen Rider yet. I'd need to do that sometime soon.
Yeah, it's convoluted. I don't care if people love Kamen Rider or not. It's not easy to get into as far as I don't know if you like soap operas. Yeah, go for it. But yeah, I'm not a big Kamen Rider fan.
Yeah.
So, but also Kamen Rider's never been readily available here in America, so it was hard to latch onto it like I did with Kaiju and Ultraman. So, but yeah, I don't much. Actually, now think about it, I think maybe Planet Eater is probably my least favorite of the Godzilla films. It's sort of not. It's boring and nihilistic. And while it has some interesting concepts going on, as well as a sequence that really should have been like one of the best sequences in all of Godzilla history, but it's sadly ruined by the movie that surrounds it. When our lead hero and lead villain are having a conversation about how all civilizations that progress ultimately ruin themselves, and they're doing it in this dreamscape where they're having the conversation inside the plane that would drop the bomb in Hiroshima. That's like a brilliant visual and a brilliant concept. But ultimately, though, yeah, it's just a very boring and slog movie. Like, coming close to a second as far as least favorite Godzilla films in the Reiwa era, that honor would have to go to Godzilla X Kong. It's just a very messy movie, in my opinion. And I rewatched it recently. Like, yeah, it's a movie that's probably a lot of fun the first time you watch it, but then revisit it, it's like, yeah, they could have done a better job with this. So, but yeah. With that says, I think Planet Eater is probably the weakest of the Reiwa era. So,
I think Godzilla vs. Kong is probably a Dirty McCorruption's least favorite too. I remember in his very well done review, he just simply goes, "I don't like it."
I don't know who this Dirty McCorruption character is. Everyone keeps saying I look like him, but I don't know him. I never heard of him. I have no connection to the Dirty McCorruption character whatsoever. And that's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, he's a very eccentric character. We'll just say that. Anyway, to get to some comments from Doom, he goes, "For me, it's a tie between Shin and -1 on what his favorite is. Worried we'll be distributing -1 also. Please, Toho, give us something not a bare bones vanilla release." Yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah, that's what I fear. Like, Funimation did a really good job with its Shin Godzilla release, although the extras were incredibly lacking. But at least we got a good transfer and a really good English dub with the subtitles. I deeply fear that -1 might be released through a really shitty company, and we'll have another Shin Ultraman Cleopatra releasing going on again. So where the subtitles don't work, the dubbed version is unavailable, and it's like, and most of the DVDs don't work that well. So I know we're supposed to be getting a better version of the Shin Ultraman release from Raven Films, but there's been some delays on that, so I'm a little afraid if that's ever going to come to fruition. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Doomzilla says King of the Monsters is the one that feels like a modern Showa Godzilla film. Ghidorah is easily the best part, as they legit brought back the King of Terror in him. Yep, for sure. That's a lot of fan sentiment, I think. And he says the anime trilogy had plenty of meat, but said meat is in supplemental materials, which sucks that we Westerners don't have access nor are able to read. Yeah, I hate when they do that. That's kind of like That's kind of like a problem that's going on with the MCU now as a whole, with all the side stories going on, that you need to know what
Um,
happened in this movie in order to understand something that's going to happen later. Ugh.
well, it's even worse when they have all this spin-off material because they don't want to waste precious seconds in the movies themselves, so they can dedicate it
Right.
to like really stupid gags and jokes instead of
Mhm.
honest to goodness character work, action sequences, or entertaining action sequences, or exposition. I miss exposition in movies. Remember when a character would take like 20 seconds to explain the situation as opposed to us tracking down the spin-off novel and mobile games? You have some idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. We've gone through all the movies. So I guess next topic we can cover is what our favorite Godzilla monsters are, besides Godzilla.
Yeah. And then after that, could we kind of wrap it up, or do you want to keep going?
Yeah, I was planning on wrapping it up after we after we would get done with the monsters.
Okay. So, all right, yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. We talked about the movies, we talked about our favorite Godzilla suits and Godzillas. So yeah, so who wants to go first as far as talking about favorite monsters?
I'll have you go since you're the guest. Still there, Raph?
That's very tough. Right. It's fine. It's like nice. It always does.
Sorry, yeah. Hmm. If you're still there, Raph, there might be a problem going on with your audio or something because I can't hear you. Here. Hang on, Raph. How about I remove you and then bring you back in because I still can't hear you. See if that'll work. Hello? That's weird. He removed himself. Let's. Apologies, Doom. Hopefully this is a technical issue that'll get sorted out. I'll try inviting you again, Ref. Okay, so I sent you another link, Ref. Hopefully that'll connect you here. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, technical difficulties. Hey.
Whoa.
Okay, you're coming. I can hear you now.
Okay then. All right. We won't do the share screen with the artwork right now, so I think that's probably for the best. But let me save it on my end before we continue.
You think that might have been the reason it was happening?
No, it was moving moving smoothly for the most part, but I think I think there just came a snag. But yeah, let's finish this out. So as I was going to jokingly say before the technical stuff happened, my favorite Godzilla monsters outside Godzilla, all of them. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's really hard for me to pick because I'm unfortunately one of those people who just love giant monsters, period. And the Godzilla franchise has always been top tier as far as these characters are concerned, especially within the movies themselves. But if I was to give some quick picks about the monsters I like a lot, Hedorah, of course, number one. he's such a bizarre antagonist, but he has like a very appealing and simplistic design. I love his movie a
He's
lot.
pretty Lovecraftian. I've
Yes.
always thought.
Yes, he does have a very Lovecraftian feel towards him, and also a lot of personality for a monster too. He's both alien, but also kind of like humorously weird and dark in his own right. So yeah, I love Header a lot. Gigan is a lot of fun, although I think I like Gigan more in the overall, the whole history of Gigan. But Gigan is a really cool monster. Anguirus, I think he does work better as Godzilla's sidekick, but yeah, it's like, and also I've always had a thing for Ankylosaurus, so that works really well. King Ghidorah, you can't go wrong with King Ghidorah. Although I think my most favorite version of King Ghidorah is like from Mothra 3, Grand King Ghidorah. I think that's probably my personal favorite King Ghidorah of all.
That is a really cool looking design for all the faults that movie might have. Yeah, it has an awesome King Ghidorah.
Yeah, I actually like Mothra 3 a lot. I think that movie is highly underrated. It's the strongest of the Mothra trilogy, and it's just a good fantasy adventure movie all around. And I love that in addition to that King Ghidorah looking so good, design and execution wise, I love that he's both the evil wizard and the dragon rolled into one character. And it's also cool to see his baby version destroying dinosaurs left and right too. So yeah, but no, King Ghidorah is a lot of fun. And there's like Kiru. Kiru is my favorite Mechagodzilla, even though Mechagodzilla is just a fun monster, period. Rodan is a lot of fun, although I think he definitely makes a bigger impact in his original film than he does in a lot of his other subsequent appearances. Biollante is a really good. Megaguirus is a very fun monster. Like, as much as I don't like her movie, Megaguirus herself is a very fun monster. And I think that's about it as far as Singular Point for Jet Jaguar. I love that we live in a world where Jet Jaguar has gotten more appreciation as a character. And even knowing that design wasn't exactly a personal favorite, I love Jet Jaguar's story arc and character in Singular Point. So they should have just called it Jet Jaguar Sci-Fi Defender, that show. I think people would have been less annoyed. But yeah, with that said, there's a lot of things about the Godzilla franchise I love a lot. And just as an honorable mention, I like a lot of the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla monsters. I think they're very appealing and colorful in their own right, and they're all heavily inspired by like the fads in 1970s science fiction fantasy happening at the time. You know, Yetis, Nessie, dinosaurs, time travel, lost civilization. You know, it feels like somebody was watching In Search of and reading a lot of sci-fi pulp novels, and they came up with the ideas for a lot of the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla monsters. And even when even when they weren't, you still had very fun colorful monsters like the Earth Eater and the Breeder Beast. So who is like I think the Breeder Beast is probably the best episode out of the whole series, because it really does feel like Hanna-Barbera trying to ape the style of a Godzilla action movie with like a city in peril and actual military attempts against the monsters, even knowing that it's kind of downplayed from what the movies offer. So yeah, that's as far as what I'm going to say about favorite Godzilla villains. I mean Godzilla characters outside Godzilla.
Yeah. So on to me. Let's see. First, I'll get to some of Doom's comments here. He said, "Same here. Trying to pick a favorite's way too hard." Yep, it is. As we'll see with me in a bit. He says both Death Ghidorah and Grand Ghidorah are awesome in regards to the Rebirth of Mothra movies. Yes. I have not seen the first Rebirth of Mothra yet. I've only seen 2 and 3, and I only saw them once. They aired on the Sci-Fi Channel back around the early 2000s, back when the Sci-Fi Channel actually lived up to its name.
Yeah. Before, just what do? They just play reruns of, I don't know, Eureka over and over again. Yeah. I don't know what the Sci-Fi Channel is doing right now, but other than canceling new shows after their second season for no reason whatsoever. But with that says, though, Yeah, it's of the Mothra trilogy. I don't. I could take or leave the first two films, but I really do like that third film quite a bit. So you're not missing. And Rebirth of Mothra is arguably the most boring of the three. So even knowing that
Uh,
Mothra 2 is the most childish, but that's all I gotta say.
yeah,
So
I didn't care much for Mothra 2.
hmm
Anyway, some of my favorite monsters besides Godzilla. First off, I think I definitely have to say Rodan. There's just something really classic about him. He's just probably the most scariest pterodactyl type monster you'd ever see. I
oh
mean,
yeah.
I mentioned this back on the stream I did with Derek, or the first stream I did for several days ago. My dad says he actually saw the English cut of the American version of Rodan when it first aired over here in America when he
Oh
was a little
neat,
kid,
neat.
and he said it scared the crap out of him,
Oh
especially
yeah.
the scenes with the Meganulas.
Oh
He
yeah.
said the Meganulas scared the crap out of him.
Yeah, Rodan itself is just a great movie, period, and it's like I even appreciate the American version of it, so but yeah, I think Rodan Godzilla 54 will always remain the classic and the progenitor, but I think Rodan is the one I most revisit as far as the classic original Toho movies go, so
Yeah, it's very good. I would
mhm.
love to see Rodan get his own solo movie again.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, just, how could I forget Baragon? Baragon's so much
I
fun.
was going to get to Baragon too.
Yeah, go on, alright.
Yeah, Baragon's another one of my favorites. He's pretty obscure, but when I first saw him in Frankenstein Conquers the World, I saw that when it aired on AMC, probably, oh gosh, that would have been around 2000 or so. And
Mhm.
Baragon instantly became one of my favorite monsters with how he was portrayed as the villain monster in that movie.
Yeah. And it's so
Oh,
funny.
and sorry, I was just going to say, Raph, whenever you plan on doing 100% Weird Fridays again, you should do Frankenstein Conquers the World because Doomzilla in the comments, he has not seen that movie yet.
Oh my goodness, I think that will be the first 1% weird we do after Christmas is over and done with. But I'm supposed to be doing a 1% weird this Friday featuring Black Christmas. It's a sort of a request from a friend. So, but I'm trying to decide what I want to do as the second feature. Although at the same time, we'll see what happens. I think we'll do Black Christmas this Friday. And then if I'm up for it, I might do a second surprise movie, but I haven't decided whether or not I want to do Shakes the Clown, which was a movie I rejected for Too Many Clowns Night. But
Yeah.
having rewatched it, it's actually bizarrely wholesome for an R-rated 80s comedy. Um, yeah, and that's the movie about about an alcoholic clown played by Bobcat Goldthwait who gets framed for murder, but it's ridiculously good for what it is. Um, or I might do a Christmas related thriller. I don't know if I want to do Cash on Demand, which is maybe too good for 1% weird. I won't say too much about it because it's definitely a movie I'm almost tempted just to do as its own live watch with friends this month. Alternatively, there's also the British movie Christmas Evil, but it's a little on the long side. And it's like I think somebody best described that movie as imagine Taxi Driver, but instead of white man rage, it's a man who wants to make the world a better place as being the real Santa. But unfortunately, he lives in shitty Britain. So
Yeah.
Taxi Driver before Mall Santas. so,
Yeah,
so we'll,
if you don't know, we're talking about. Raph has a Twitch channel where he had 100% weird a little a little thing TNT used to do on Friday nights back around the 90s that was kind of similar to Monster Vision, where they'd show some pretty cheesy sci-fi monster movies and stuff. And Raph's been starting to do that throughout the last year, and so yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, 100% weird on TNT was just TNT's excuse to play any random B movies they wouldn't air anywhere else on a late Friday night. So, granted, there was a lot of sci-fi horror movies, like a lot of overlap with Monster Vision, but there would also be like, oh, tonight it's Hitler biographies or hillbilly comedies, or like we're gonna play some repackaged episodes of Chips in movie form because that's what the 70s theaters used to do. So yeah, it was a wide variety of weird stuff, but we'll see what happens. At the very least, I'll do Black Christmas, and then if maybe I don't know, maybe the Paul Lynde Christmas special of Britain will come along. Will have to be something. So I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up because on the last stream I found out Doomzilla had never seen Frankenstein Conquers the World, and neither has Derek. Derek said he hasn't seen Frankenstein Conquers the World yet either. So if Derek can tune in,
no, if I can get a good copy of that, I'll definitely do that in January. So just be a little more patient. I'll introduce Frankenstein Conquers the World to everybody. So
it's a pretty good kaiju movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, back onto monsters besides Godzilla. I liked another one I want to definitely throw out there is King Caesar. If Laura Fitkin was watching, I'm sure I'd be making her proud because she's like the biggest King Caesar fan. But I always like. Go ahead.
No, it's like I can't wait to see if they do something interesting with King Caesar for his 50th anniversary coming up. Although it'll probably be overshadowed by Mechagodzilla and possibly King Ghidorah too. So since they're celebrating their anniversaries again. But King Caesar has a lot of potential, and I really hope they do something with that character in next year, big time. So
I always had this idea well, it wasn't an idea. I kind of started writing it down. It was somewhere back in the 2000s. I always thought it'd be cool to see a King Caesar versus Titanosaurus movie. Which, by the way, Titanosaurus is another obscure monster who I really loved. I had this idea in my head where it would be set back in ancient Okinawa times, and Titanosaurus would come ashore and attack Okinawa. The Okinawans would activate King Caesar, have him come out of his mountain, and King Caesar and Titanosaurus would have a battle that lasted for like days. That was the story that I had in my head. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, King Caesar. I always thought he was cool. I always wondered if what would happen if he would have fought King Kong to see who would truly get the title of king.
Yeah.
of each of the kingdoms that they would. Well, not kingdoms, but people who they watched over. Like I said, Titanosaurus. He was another obscure monster who I really liked. And from seeing him in Terror Mechagodzilla, I just thought he was a really cool dinosaur-based monster. He's another one who I wish I would like to see make a comeback. And of course, well, who doesn't love King Ghidorah?
Yes.
I'm with you and Kiryu too. Kiryu is also possibly my favorite Mechagodzilla, although I do still love the Showa Mechagodzilla too. He's a cool villain.
The show and Mechagodzilla, both of them, they're really awesome too. So you can't go wrong with Mechagodzilla. Even Heisei Mechagodzilla, as bland as I think that character is, there's still some fun elements about him because he gave us Mogira.
Yep. Heisei Mechagodzilla is probably the one that matches his Godzilla the most that he's based off of physically. And I do love Gigan too. Gigan's a really cool monster. I'd really love to see some kind of movie that shows how he gets created. I've always wondered how that creation process would have been for creating Gigan, what alien race might have created him.
Yes. Yeah, and also while we're on the subject, unlike most Godzilla fans, I definitely love King Kong and Mothra. I have nothing against either character. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why Godzilla fans are so picky. I think they're like Batman fans who hate Superman. It's like there's really no need to hate Superman. So just because he's not Batman, it's like that weird mentality. So,
he's not our dark edge lord.
Yeah, and I think they feel the same about King Kong and Mothra too, because they're a little more fluffier characters, both literally and figuratively. But of course, all the Godzilla villains, all the Godzilla characters pale in comparison to the Lord and Savior, which is the giant octopus.
Long live Odako.
Yes,
if that's how we're supposed to say his name.
Yeah, it's like I'm surprised that he ended up becoming one of the big villains of Godzilla There Be Dragons, the comic book. So, yes.
I'll have to check out Derek's. I know Derek did some reviews on Godzilla There Be Dragons on either his TikTok account or on YouTube. I'll need to give it a look
Mhm.
sometime.
Yeah, get a little
Uh,
tired. Sorry about that.
We're about ready to wrap up anyway. So for one final question, Raph, I think I'll ask, what's your favorite kaiju movie with Godzilla involved? If and you can say more than one if there is some that you really do like to.
Oh, wait, favorite Godzilla movie that doesn't have Godzilla in it?
Well, favorite kaiju movie that doesn't have Godzilla involved. Yeah.
Oh, favorite kaiju movie. I'll play it safe and just say Rodan. I think Rodan is just a very badass movie. Yeah, and I'll do quick shout outs to Gamera 2, Advantage Legion, Gamera the Brave, I Frankenstein Conquers the World, Ultraman Zero, The Revenge of Ultraman Belial. Basically Star Wars meets Ultraman. It's amazing. What else is there? Other kaiju movies I like a lot. Space, like I have a weird liking for Space Amoeba, even though I know deep down I shouldn't.
I still need to
Yeah,
see Space Amoeba. Most people I've heard say they didn't think too much of it, but I'd like
yeah,
to see it soon to find out for myself.
yeah. I think it's a decent. I think it's a very decent little movie. Um, and there's probably tons of other kaiju films out there that I can't think of at the moment. So, oh, Kong Skull Island, how come? And the original King Kong, can't forget those two.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's all I can think of at the moment. So,
Perfect. Briefly for me, I'll definitely have to say the Heisei Gamera trilogy. Oh, I'm surprised you didn't say Gamera the Brave. You're like the
I did
biggest
say
defender
Gamera the
of.
Brave. I said Gamera
Oh, I
2
thought
and
you said.
Gamera the Brave. So
Oh, I didn't hear Gamera the Brave. Yeah.
that's okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. This was when you were at Gamer of the Brave on your Twitch account this year. This was the first time I ever saw that one, and yeah, I ended up enjoying that one quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's criminally underrated. It's just unfortunately I think because it's a more family friendly movie that happened to come out after the Heisei Gamera, a lot of people just give it a hard time based on that and that alone. But
Mhm.
no, I really do. It's like, yeah, Brave is one of those kaiju films I can put on anytime and just enjoy it for what it is. So, granted, I wish we could have gotten more movies in that universe, but for what it is, it's a nice little capper to the Gamera movies. So,
Mhm. It's the one movie besides Megamind, and I can't forget what the other movie is. You say with Brayton. That's the only three movies you've ever seen in your whole life, right?
we'll say the third one is Hercules and the Princess of Troy. So, yeah, I've seen more than three movies, but now that's just gonna be the recurring gag. It's like Megamind, Gamera the Brave, and I'll just switch out the third movie with whatever. It's like the Golden Needles with Joe Don Baker, Mystery Science Theater the movie. I don't know.
Viewers, if you're not aware, this is kind of an inside joke I have going on with Raph. Well, it's really an inside joke Raph has with his friend Brayton Connor, who frequently
Hmm.
collaborates with him on their Twitch streams. It's TV Tuesdays with Twitch and the movie Graveyard Shift that they do, and that's a frequent joke that they like to say is that Raph's only seen three movies in his whole life: Gamera the Brave, Megamind, and this Hercules movie he just mentioned.
Yeah, well,
That's
no,
what
I
we're
like
talking
I
about.
like to switch it around. Next time I ask next time they ask me the question, I'll say something as stupid as like the birds, the Tingler, and Son of Godzilla.
Son
Okay.
Godzilla's not that bad. I actually think that one's pretty underrated.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah,
So,
for kaiju movies besides Godzilla, like I was saying earlier, I just include the Heisei Gamera trilogy in one spot. I always view them as a whole. Each one's unique in tone, and they all three just absolutely rock. It's a modern take
mhm.
on the classic Gamera monster that was first introduced back in the Showa era, and it mixes ancient civilizations, biotechnology, alien invaders, and mysticism into just a delightfully entertaining package. The films
Yes,
start out
indeed.
fairly lighthearted, but by the third movie, Gamera Revenge of Iris, things take a turn for the dark and serious.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just very, very good watches, and I agree with many fans who say that they were probably actually better than some of the Heisei era Godzilla movies that were coming out around that time.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So, and with that says, I think I've kind of hit my limit. I'm about to head off to bed early because I'm a tired old man.
I was going to say War of the Gargantuas and Pacific Rim are my other picks for favorite
Oh,
non-Godzilla kaiju movies,
yeah.
and
How
I
how
really
could
do
I?
like.
Yeah, how could I forget Pacific Rim? So, yeah, if we're
Yeah,
gonna
and I'm
include
interested in Devil. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say if we're gonna include American giant monster movies, I definitely want to give a shout out to um a lesser known 1950s movie called Kronos, which is basically a giant robot movie that comes to Earth to suck energy. But it's actually, I think it's
Oh,
actually pretty decent for what it is.
I've heard you talk about it before, but I've never seen it. I'm interested in seeing it now.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, yeah, Kronos is really good. It's like, and I do have a DVD of it, a good DVD, so I might actually make a good copy of it as opposed to the crummy version that's on YouTube right now.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, no, really, I really do dig Kronos quite a bit. So, and of the
I
Ray
need to.
Harryhausen, and while Ray Harryhausen has done a lot of great movies with giant monsters in them, if I had to pick a more traditional one, oh screw it, I'll just say Jason and the Argonauts. I'll cheat there.
It's probably the best one he ever did. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, it's amazing. So, Kalos forever. So,
And at some point I'm going to finally dip into the Ultraman movies because I've heard there's especially. I want to start off with Ultraman the Next because I've heard that's like a good way to get introduced to Ultraman as far as
oh yeah,
movies go, and then go from there.
yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely one of the more serious, straight-faced Ultraman entries, and it's standalone enough they don't have to worry about other Ultramen. I know that there's a good-looking version of it on Tubi right now. It's like, yeah, yeah, no, it's yeah. There's a lot of Ultraman movies, but it's like Ultraman the Next is a good starting point, so I really can't say anything for or against it. So,
Okay, that's where we're on the stream for today. Ref,
yeah.
thanks so much for coming on. You were a very good guest, and it was really a lot of fun talking Godzilla with you.
Oh yeah, no, it was fun being here. I'm just yeah, sorry about that. Just old man is hitting me, and I've been doing way too much today too. So
Okay, yeah, I definitely plan on having you on again for other discussions. Two other big discussions I plan on doing in the future is a discussion of all the King Kong movies and Planet of
Mhm.
the Apes. If I can find anyone who's interested in discussing all the Planet of the Apes movies with me too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen enough of the Planet of the Apes, of the original Planet of the Apes. I've never seen any of the new ones they made, so I
Oh,
might be up for that.
check, yeah, check out the new trilogy whenever you get the chance. That I was actually surprised with how good the new trilogy turned out from the last decade.
Hmm.
Alrighty. Doomzilla says, "Fun stream today, Shay and Raph. Thanks for tuning in, Doom, as you always do for everyone's streams. Thank you,
Hmm.
viewers who will be watching in the future. Thanks to you, Joe Mento, who came earlier, and yes, thank you again. Have a good night, everybody."
Good night.
End stream.